Hey everybody, welcome to episode 80 of the podcast. And hi there, how you doing? Glad to see you here again. We've got another whole bunch of questions to go through, like every month. And first, like always, I'll be answering some game-related questions. Sometimes people submit questions that are about games that Jed could answer. This month we didn't have any. So after I'm done with games, and there's a little special twist to that this month as well, we will then move on to the personal questions and answers where Jen shows up. And amongst other things, I will once again cry on camera about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because it seems like that's just becoming a trope with me these days. It's practically expected. So we'll talk about all kinds of stuff in the personal section. Now, one thing before I get going, if you're a longtime listener of the podcast, you may have noticed I finally decided, hey, you know what? I should try to monetize this podcast and use ads on anchor.fm. And if you are sick and tired of hearing those ads of me saying how great anchor.fm is, because okay, no one's paying me to say this. It is really excellent. It is such a fantastic platform. It just makes it easy for anybody to just, with a smartphone and nothing else, start and make a professional sounding podcast for free. It's a loss leader for Spotify, I think, is the way all that works. All right, that's not part of the ad. But anyway, if you're sick and tired of me mentioning that in every episode, what I recently started doing is, for Patreon backers of the show, I am now putting every podcast episode, every R&R audio episode, everything that goes on the podcast channel is getting duplicated on the Rahdo Patreon podcast, which for $1 a month, which is the lowest level you can back me on Patreon, well, you'll get voting rights, for what games I'm going to cover in a given month. You'll get the micro badge that appears on Board Game Geek, but now you also get to hear ad-free of everything that goes on the Rahdo Talks Through podcast. So if you're just sick of those and you have one extra US dollar a month, you can back on Patreon and subscribe to a different podcast feed that gives you all the same stuff without the ads. So I just started doing that just this month, and to start out 2022, just wanted to let everybody know. But with all that out of the way, let's actually get to the questions, because folks, this show doesn't exist without you. So please send more questions to questions@rahdo.com. And with that out of the way, we've done our business. I'll be right back. Okie dokie. Let's get to it, folks. Our gaming questions. First of all, from Gerald. Gerald asks, or notes, that I've mentioned that Stefan Feld is my favorite designer. And Gerald wonders, do I know what the difference is with Feld's designs that makes me enjoy them more than Rosenberg's or Pfister's? Is it the puzzle-like constraints placed on the actions rather than pressure from the game? Like the feeding pressure in Agricola or what have you? So that's a good question. Oh, okay, well, first of all, I'll be honest. Part of it is nostalgia. Stefan Feld was really a major stepping stone for me as a burgeoning, growing board game geek. Certainly, my first important step was Pandemic, so I owe all that to Matt Leacock. My second important step was Agricola, and I became aware of Uwe Rosenberg, and I devoured Lvov and everything else. Jen still loves, Gates of Loyang so much because of that time. But first time I played Notre Dame, and shortly thereafter, I think, Year of the Dragon. Those two games made me just say, wow. And you're right. It is, there is a creativity to Feld's designs, I think, that still puts him a leg above. I mean, putting aside the fact I was just starting to do a nostalgia thing, but you get it. I love it because it was there as an important part of my evolution as a gamer. But putting that aside, every one of Feld's games always have, at its heart, some really simple idea. Whether it's a cube tower, or a Mancala, or, two different characters working on different tracks trying to coordinate, or card drafting in Notre Dame, or whatever it might be. But he always approaches them in a way that I have not seen before. When he did Amerigo, Queen Games had been trying to get to designers to do something with cube towers for years after Shogun and Wallenstein, and they'd failed. And Feld comes along and said, I think I can do something new with it. And he does the exact opposite of what anybody would expect. That was a game that was basically replacing dice, and he turns it into an action selection mechanism. And that was so brilliant. I don't know if other designers would have approached it the same way he did. And I always feel that way whenever whenever I experience a new game of his, unless it's like a revisiting Burgundy into card form or something like that, but whenever I revisit a truly new game of his, I'm always surprised. Whatever that core idea is wonderful. And now here's the thing. You mentioned Pfister. Pfister is, Alexander Pfister is fast gaining on Stefan. At this point, I might as well say, yeah, Alexander Pfister is my second favorite board game designer of all time. And it's because he does the same thing, and he does it really, really well. I was just a few minutes ago taking a look at Boon Lake. In fact, I did an unboxing of it live on Twitch right before I started filming this, or recording this, which I'm also doing live on Twitch in front of an audience. And, the cool simple, elegant, ties the whole game together mechanism of Boon Lake is brilliant. It's this tile selection slider thing that honestly, if you'd said, yeah, this was from Stefan Feld, I would have said, yep, this feels like Stefan Feld. Putting aside, I know a lot of people when they think of Feld, they think of, oh, look at all these point salad-y things. You can focus on all these different things and all that. And yeah, he does that. A lot of designers do that. But that's not what makes him special to me. What makes him special is that central nugget. And I think Pfister is getting there. And now what Pfister has over Feld is a much stronger sense of theme. I mean, don't get me wrong. I tend to look at Feld's games as fairly thematic Euros as well. What was the last big one before? What was it? The thing about the gnomes and setting the fires. Oh, that's driving me nuts. There's an expansion for it now too. Anyway, that game, to me, it felt very thematic. I think Aquasphere feels very thematic, but Euro thematic. Pfister goes a little bit further, especially when he's given the opportunity by publishers to actually put in little narrative campaigns. I know not everybody likes them, but I love them. Oh, I should have looked in the rulebook for Boon Lake if he did that there. If Pfister could, I think, in time, overtake Feld. Because I think he's got the same chops. He creates this big, huge, wonderful point salad around some simple little idea that's very, very clever and original. Even if it's doing something that other people have done, it's doing it in a new and different way. Another thing that really stands out for Feld, though, and I think this is true for Pfister too, is I know, I've heard Feld say this, his main line of testing his games is him and his wife sitting down and playing them while he's developing them. And I think that shows. I never really feel like, oh, I'm really suffering in this game for only being able to play it 2 players with my wife. I always feel like, there were no compromises made, that I'm not losing out. And like I said, that's kind of true with Pfister as well. They're really, man, if the two of them were to do something together, that would be amazing. But it's getting kind of hard for me to say. Rosenberg, don't get me wrong, I love Rosenberg as well. The interesting thing is I've been falling out of love with him over the last few years because he's really stepped away a lot from what for me is his defining feature, that what do you call it? The pressure, that harsh external pressure he puts on players to always kind of live up to the requirements of the game. As he steps away from that and makes his game more laid back and easygoing, I found I've still enjoyed them, but they haven't been quite as compelling for me. And those are 3 masters of the craft. I really am always excited to be whatever it is. And for Pfister, it's probably 30% nostalgia and 70% appreciation of just how he approaches every new system completely fresh and exciting, and I just love seeing it. It's like a present, opening and playing one of his games for the first time for me. Thanks for asking. That was a good question. Next up, Gerald says, what games do I keep just for solo? Games I know Jen might never play again. I have 2, and only 2. They are Space Hulk Death Angel, which I absolutely love. I mean, that game is everything I should hate about games. It's roll to resolve. It's kind of Ameritrashy, theme over gameplay, but it has really good, solid gameplay chops as well. But unfortunately, it's basically set in a James Cameron's Aliens-esque setting, and so Jen would hate it just for that reason. But also, it's one of the most harsh, cruel, unforgiving, maybe the most harsh, cruel, unforgiving co-op of all time. So Jen would hate it for that reason as well. I love it too much to get rid of it. I don't get to play it as much as I should. It's interesting, on my request.rahdo list, where people can thumb stuff they want me to film, the expansions, the long out-of-print expansions for them are getting higher and higher. When they make it to the top, I'm going to get that game back out and probably make a lot of people sad when I talk about these awesome expansions no one can get anymore. But so I keep that one, and then I keep Marvel Champions. And now Jen will play Marvel Champions with me. When we first started playing it, she really liked it. But over time, Marvel Champions is really starting to get more complex as they're heaping more and more and more stuff, more keywords, and I think she's finding herself enjoying it less and less. But I mean, she will still play it with me if I ask nice, and And but I mean, I'm getting new stuff. I mean, I just got Valkyrie the other day, so I want to play that. So I'm playing that solo a lot too. It's just those two. I mean, I have lots of other games I could play solo, but only keeping solely for solo, only those two games, and because of those reasons. And Marvel, because I love Marvel comics so much. Even when I'm unhappy with the direction the game is going, I still love it too much to get rid of it, and I still want to keep playing. All right, and then third question: what made Imperium Classics / Legends fall from grace? Gerald notices it didn't make my top 10 of the year, but a few months ago it was number 1. I think you're saying that I said this might literally be the best game of the year when I covered it originally. But Funfair, meanwhile, survived. Did I have negative experiences with it later on? No. I did if you go back and watch my final thoughts for Imperium Classics / Legends, I did talk about how great it was, and I still stand by that. It is one of the best designs of 2021 by far. It is so brilliant. But when I talked to my final thoughts at the time, I mentioned I don't know if we're going to keep it because a sizable portion of that game features, oh, that's a real nice civilization you're building over there. It'd be a real shame if something happened to it type stuff. It's not everywhere, but it's interesting. I think each box comes with like 8 different civilizations you can play. The Aztecs versus the Greeks and stuff like that. And while there are several of them that ostensibly do not feature any kind of direct screwage with each other, even the passive, the live and let live ones, always had things that allowed me to change the world in such a way that it would really ruin Jen's day. But I would do it because it was the best, most efficient thing I could do at the time. And then forget about the Vikings and the ones that were actually just like directly, I'm going to smash all your stuff. So at the end of the day, it's not a reflection of the game at all. It's a brilliant design, one of the best. It's up there with Race for the Galaxy and Raise Arcana and and all the rest of them. But if it weren't for the direct, the active and the passive that's woven into the game, I would keep it, and I would love to play it more. Also, by the way, to your previous question, it has a great solo mode. I seriously did consider thinking about keeping it for the solo. That could have almost been my third game because I think it's so good. But I realized there's just no reason for me to do it. I'd never play it solo. I would always play Marvel Champions solo first and foremost. So ultimately, for folks who don't know, games that I get that we don't end up keeping, I end up sending down to Las Vegas to join the Dice Tower West library. I've actually got another 70 or 80 games in the next room that I've got a box in a big gigantic FedEx freight box this weekend, so I can send it next week because the convention's almost here. And one thing, it's actually made it a lot easier for me doing this to be able to say no to games because I know, these are going to go to a library where lots of people will get to enjoy it, and that makes me feel better about doing it. Plus, I don't have to what am I going to do with this game? I got to try and sell it on Board Game Geek or and all that. I mean, I've just got this place where hey, all these new games that just don't work for me and Jen, I've got a place to send them, and I know they will go on and live happy lives. At least once a year at the convention. I don't know, do they all stay in a warehouse? I wouldn't be surprised if the rest of the year they're available at the local friendly game store that the runner of Board Game Geek, Tim, runs. I'm not quite sure about that, but anyway, so it's been easier for me to get rid of things than it has been in years past because I've got this really wonderful dumping ground that to me is a very positive experience. So anyway, that was the problem with Imperium. It's brilliant. So brilliant, I almost decided to keep it as a solo. But yeah, for me and Jen, it was just had a little bit too much of the old, if you can't see me, I'm punching 2 fists together, symbolically. So yeah, that's what it came down to. So smart, though. It's one of those games. A few years ago, I did a games I regret getting rid of, and it was really a list of the best games I've ever gotten rid of because they were player versus player. Imperium Classics might go to the top of that list, quite frankly. It's that good. I cannot stress enough just how fantastic it is. I know a lot of people say it has a really problematic rule book. I didn't have a problem with it at all, but I read literally I was going to say thousands, but probably not. High hundreds, low thousands of rule books every year, and I didn't have a hard time with the rule book for it. Anyway, though, we're moving on. Thank you, Gerald. Ben says, what are my thoughts on cryptocurrency-related things entering the board game industry? Come On, which I think they used to be called CMON, but didn't they announce they want to be called Come On? So I'm going to call them Come On, Cool Mini or not, announced they are going to come out with NFTs. Kickstarter announced they'll be running on the blockchain. Ben continues, Ben knows I don't know too much about this kind of stuff, but Ben thinks it's the next step in technology. But a lot of people in the board game industry are hating on these announcements and can't, according to Ben, provide solid arguments why. Environmental impact seems to be the biggest argument, but as far as Ben's concerned, that's a non-issue because stuff coming out, that cryptocurrency is switching to greener ways. Not all cryptocurrency is bad for the environment. So what are my thoughts? You're right, Ben. I really don't know too much about it. Probably the majority of what I know about NFTs and cryptocurrency, I've listened to a couple of podcasts where, pro and anti NFTers have gone at it and said, well, this is bad. And said, well, you don't understand. That's a simplistic view and, blah, blah, blah. So, I've heard that and kind of most of it went in one ear and out the other. I agree that I do think crypto, NFT, all of this stuff is actually for reasons we can't really identify yet, because it's all so brand new and we don't know how the world is changing. We cannot truly anticipate what our world will look like in 30 years from today. But I think one thing that's a fairly safe bet is virtual digital space is going to be a much bigger part of the human experience. At least, I don't know, in the Western world at the very least. But I do think that is something that's coming. Obviously, Facebook's going to try and make that happen with Meta and all of that. I'm not saying we're going to become Ready Player One or anything like that, but I do think that's a big, big part of the future. And obviously, I think this whole push for blockchain is a fundamental scaffolding that the future of our relationship with technology is going to get built on. And yes, there is no choice about it. Right now, it is an ugly, dirty scaffolding. What is it? Ethereum consumes as much power as Slovakia or Lithuania. I keep hearing quotes like that. That the stupid mining system that they came up with. Because what was in one of the podcasts, I remember them talking about how originally the developers of Bitcoin, they came up with this workload system because they thought that would be a way to throttle it, because it would take so much energy to produce this currency that it would never really explode in popularity. And they fundamentally just misunderstood what server farms would pop up in frigid climates to keep all the servers cool, just how much people would invest in it. And that was like a fundamental misunderstanding. But as I understand it, I forget, proof of service versus proof of stake, something like that there is an alternate way it can be done. And that's the way it should have been done from the get-go. And Ethereum is going to switch over to the other mode. I think that's what you mentioned. Yeah, Ethereum, which is the basis for NFTs, most NFTs, is going to switch over to the cleaner option. I'm sure they're working on it now. I'm sure it's a very big, complicated process that I couldn't possibly guess. But I do not think the people behind Ethereum are literally evil. I am sure they're like, can we please do this? We want to help the planet. So that will happen. At which point, as you say, the environmental impact will largely go out the window. Interesting thing, too, all this mining is happening regardless of whether NFTs are happening. It's kind of like, every day planes fly, the route from LA to Dallas, whether they've got people on those planes or not. Just because you bought a ticket doesn't suddenly mean that, now there's a carbon impact to this plane. That plane was going to fly regardless of whether you're on the plane. The same thing is true. That Ethereum is going to be mined regardless of whether you buy a limited edition, a cool mini or not, virtual avatar or whatever it is they're doing. I don't even know what they're doing. So, and that's not an excuse. It is the reality of it. The stuff is going to shift over to be green. And I do think long term, this is important. This is important as a way to empower creators. Because, certainly one of the big advantages of NFTs is if somebody makes something, they can imprint forever their name on that. And as that virtual good changes hands and gets sold, a portion of the proceeds can always go back. Because if there's one thing the internet has proven, it is cruel to artists. Artists get shafted by the internet regularly. Musicians, classical artists. Maybe because the nature of the internet was originally designed to be the great equalizer, and everybody can get anything they want for free. Everything is digital. Everything is duplicatable. And NFTs are a way to get some kind of control back, so that creators can get more control over their destiny as creators. I think that's a good thing. Also, this kind of stuff ultimately leads towards true cross-platform goods. That, this is more of a video game realm thing, but I can imagine this expanding beyond just video games. That, hey, if I buy this bowler hat because it's mine and it's on blockchain, I can wear that bowler hat in every first-person shooter. And so that's a way to get corporate interests that do not align to work together. So there's a lot of and the person who made that bowler hat can get a piece no matter what game that bowler hat appears in 20 years later. That's incredibly exciting. That's something that blockchain and NFTs allow for. And I do think that's important as an evolution as our lives become more digital. Yeah, I think the pro NFT argument is always, you know what? Yes, there is only one Mona Lisa, and millions of people travel to the Louvre every year to see the Mona Lisa. And when they do, they're disappointed because it's a tiny little thing. I've seen it. But you know what? Millions of prints of the Mona Lisa are hanging on walls around the world. Is the art on those any less valuable? Should you look at that and say, whatever? Or the existence of all those, should that make the one copy in the Louvre say, whatever? Everybody's got one in their living room. I don't think so. And I think it's a fundamental hard thing for humanity to view digital goods in the same way they view tangible goods. But I'm old enough to remember just a few short years ago, probably less than a decade ago, in the video game industry, everyone was like, what's with all this downloadable video games? This is crap. If I can't own the Blu-ray disc in my hand, I'm a pass. And they were dinosaurs waiting to get hit by a meteor of direct download. Direct downloading games is so much better. But suddenly you don't have a physical object anymore. But it doesn't mean that game you bought that you direct downloaded doesn't still have meaning and wait for you. Where is it? I've got, I don't know where it is. Oh, there it is. Hold on. I'm talking from very far away. Okay, here's another example. Again, you can't see this if you're listening on the podcast. Here's my copy of Tapestry. My copy of Tapestry has a little stamp on it that says I have, from the first printing, 25,000 units. My first printing is number 9644. That means nothing. That's meaningless. But it's kind of cool. It makes my copy special in a totally inconsequential way. And to be fair, that's what NFTs are. But it doesn't mean that you can't still feel like, well, by not just duplicating it, but actually getting the original NFT, I'm directly supporting the artist who made this. I have the one. I mean, and as Minecraft becomes something that we all have wired into our eyeballs, anytime we want, we can be in the real world or we can be in virtual world, and I could see the original one. I can imagine a future where it is just as meaningful to go to somebody's meta house or Minecraft house or whatever, where they've got the cool mini or not, Spider-Man zombie image, the one that's NFT'd hanging there, that's the original, that people would say, hey, I want to go look at that. Yeah, I've got my own copy of it the same way I have a Mona Lisa hanging on my wall. I do think that is a viable potential future. And for anybody who says, oh, that's impossible, that'll never happen, those are the same people who are saying, I will never direct download a video game if I can't own the physical copy. To me, it's kind of it's in the same wheelhouse. And so I guess overall I'm positive and I'm upbeat about it. You're right. Anybody who complains about the environmental impact is right to be concerned. And it's right for them to complain and shout about it from the rooftop to pressure the crypto industry to adopt and shift. I mean, there's new cryptocurrencies coming all the time. But until, Bitcoin and Ethereum, is that it? Make the change. But these changes will happen over time. I believe. I'm confident. I'm looking up. Bullish instead of bearish, I think. So that's kind of where I am. And you're right. I was going to say I don't have much to say about it, but I guess I did. Okay. Anyway, though, we move on. Jay noticed that Faiyum dropped in my rankings quite a bit. What happened? Was it the game length or the scaling? It was the game length, but it's not really that. If you watch my run through for Faiyum, I said I really liked it, but the one problem we had is it was overlong. And I had a solution that Jen and I played, and I'm the last person to want to do house rules. That's not true. I'm the next to the last person to want to do house rules because sometimes I do it. Sometimes I go ahead and say, well, you know what? Everything about this game is awesome. Making this one little change I don't think will change, will hurt the balance of the game, and let's go for it. And so I talked about that in my final thoughts. And I raved about the game, kind of played our way. And I made a mistake with Faiyum. I rated it based on my homebrew rule variant, which was basically, is a really simple thing. In the regular game, every round you remove 2 cards from the river to kind of speed the game along. And I said, remove 3 instead of 2. It's as simple as that. It kind of replicates another player who was taking cards in a 2-player game. And just doing that just sped the game up. But I rated it off that, and that's not fair. That's not the official rules. Every game on rank.rahdo.com is ranked based on their official rules, not homebrew rules when I change things like that. So, and then when I recognized, oh crap, I goofed up, I'm ranking it based on my own rules, not the official rules, it dropped, that's why. That happens sometimes with games. Pretty much almost every time you see a significant drop like that, it's as often as not, it could be an explanation along those lines. Okay, then we've got some questions from Darren. Darren says that I said in my top 10 of 2021 video that Final Girl interests me, but Jen doesn't like the theme, so it was a non-starter. Darren then adds, it's a solo game. It's solo only. So I would not be playing with her anyway. So in that way, her thoughts on it don't matter. Or do you only play solo games with her as co-op when you do cover them? No, you're right. I had no freaking idea, Darren. I am embarrassed as all get out. Because isn't it kind of like a spiritual sequel to those hostage negotiator games? I did cover those solo. I thought they were great. I didn't keep them, as I mentioned earlier. There's only 2 solo games I keep in the world, but I really enjoyed them. And now I very much want to try Final Girl. The only reason I dismissed it out of hand is because I thought it was a co-op game, but I didn't realize it was solo. And if I'd looked a little bit closer, I would have. Yeah, because I really dig the idea. An empowered woman. The last girl trope. Fighting back, taking control. I suspect it'd be great. And again, the hostage negotiation solo games were great, and I think this is from the same team. I believe. I could be wrong about that. So yeah, I am pro Final Girl, the board game, and I would love to give it a try sometime. I was just a dummy. All right, next. Darren points out that I've said twice in that same video that I got rid of Sleeping Gods because it's a campaign game and I don't have time to play those. And if I did have time to play campaigns, I'd go back to Gloomhaven. And that's right. I believe I said worse effect. And then Darren continues. And the second game I would play would be Seven Wonders because I've got all the bells and whistles for it. And then Darren points out, I said Seven Wonders twice. Did I mean Seventh Continent? Or does Seven Wonders have a campaign? No, I was a total and complete idiot. Believe me, I got so many comments on the YouTube version. What are you talking about? What's the campaign mode in Seven Wonders? We have to know. That sounds amazing. And like, nope. I meant Seventh Continent. Seventh Continent, I got my review copy of it. But then when the expansion with the balloons and all that stuff came out, I love the game so much, I actually went ahead and bought all that content myself. So, and that's where it's Gloomhaven, and it's that. If I had time to go back and say, hey, every week, every Sunday, we're going to play one of our outstanding campaign games, like we did years ago when we were working through Gloomhaven, it would be, right now, it'd be Jaws of the Lion, because I'd like to finish that before Frosthaven comes out, and it would be Seventh Continent, not Seven Wonders. So that was just a dumb mistake on my part. You were right to notice, and you guessed correctly. I meant Seventh Continent. Okay. Matt says that he just listened to my 2021 preliminary top 10, didn't hear any mention of land or versus sea. Thought I might be interested. It's a tile laying game with double-sided tiles that looks like it would work well with 2 players. Why? I'm aware of it. Yeah, it's a tile laying game. It's like, is it a 2-player only thing? I don't remember. But I heard it's kind of like a new twist on Carcassonne. Let me go over to Board Game Geek and go to land versus... If my keyboard isn't dead. Is my keyboard dead? Has my keyboard died? Oh my gosh. My keyboard has died. I can't type this in. This is a rechargeable keyboard. All right. How am I going to do this? All righty. Do I have a USB cable somewhere around here? Yes, I do. Do I have a thing that I can plug in here? Oh my gosh. How embarrassing. I'm sorry, folks. But we'll get through this, you and me. Just one of many technical snafus I've had recording today. All right, so there we go. Plug this in here, and hopefully that will start recharging the keyboard. What an embarrassing predicament. Did that do it? Wake you up? Come on, wake up. Wake up, keyboard. No, the keyboard. All right, let's rejigger the little receiver for it. There we go. Okay. Phew. How embarrassing. Nobody mentioned this. All right, anyway, what was it? It was Land versus Sea, right? Land versus Sea from 2021. All right, let's take a look. Let's take a looky-loo. All right. Well, first of all, I'll be honest. Versus immediately puts my Care Bear sense on alert. And, right, it is a tile-laying game, and I think it's like Carcassonne, but the tiles are two-sided and they're hexes. But you are still like, instead of making cities, you're making land base or seas. Instead of doing roads, you're doing caravans. I seem to recall all of that. But, you know what it is? I think I think it's because I read the description here on Board Game Geek, and I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, there we go. Other tiles allow players to play a second tile or steal a player's tile, but not their last one. I'm like, okay, that's a 1-2 punch for me. You already put versus in the title, which implies, doesn't guarantee, but implies this is a game where players are actively, ooh, how can I stop you from achieving what you want to do? So I was already thinking that, and then I saw literally in the first paragraph, they say, oh, by the way, you can steal stuff from each other. I'm like, okay, then I don't need to play your game. That's clearly not made for me. And now maybe folks will say, but that's only 1 out of 50 cards. And I'll say, yeah, but if it's still the card that I play, I'm still not going to enjoy it anymore. So that's why I passed on it. And maybe that's wrong. There were so many games. I'm always looking for any reason I can to skip on a game. And that's why I skipped on Land vs. Sea. Because somebody pointed out, oh, you can steal things from each other. And like, okay, well, I'll go play a tile lane game where I don't have to find myself in a situation where, ooh, should I do this? Or should I steal Jen's thing? I just don't want to be in that situation. That's not fun for me. Okay. Let's see. What else have we got? Patrick asks, have I heard of Anunnaki. It's a 22 release from Cranio and Simone Luciani. Seems like a 4X Eurogame. Thoughts? Well, it's from Simone Luciani. I should pay attention to it, but that doesn't sound familiar. And I think I know why. You just said it's a 4X Eurogame. You gave me a link. Let me go on ahead and follow the link. That will open up in Board Game Geek. Let's take a looky here. That's some nice cover art. Develop your alien civilization among ancient human tribes, gods, and space travel. Oh, so this is kind of like the same topic as, what was it, from Board and Dice? For Origin, First Builders. You know, the idea of, aliens, but this time we are actually the aliens instead of the humans getting the... That's cool. I like that subject matter. But, yeah, player fighting. 4X game. It's a 4X game from Simone Luciani and Danilo Sabio in an ancient dystopian past. Mythology and science fiction come together. This all sounds very good, except for that 4th freaking X, where every once in a while, it'd be a real shame if somebody came in there and burned down your village. That's what I have to do now, because that is the best thing I can do. Because you didn't protect yourself, which means you should have spent the entire game preparing for inevitable attack from me. And Jen doesn't want to be in that situation. I don't want to be in that situation. That's why, let's see, did I mark it? I am subscribed, and I put a 4. I am thinking about it. My hope is at some point between now and whenever it comes out that I find out that, we actually come with a co-op mode, or there's a way that you can eliminate all the attack cards or something like that. So I'm paying attention, but not much, because 4X is an instant, kiss of death for me and Jen. Okay, Scott has found that with multiple SM, and I believe he means Stonemaier games, but Viticulture has found this with several Stonemaier games, but Viticulture and Tapestry, particularly with expansions, are good examples. There are so many cards, the Tapestry cards, for example, but if drawn at the wrong time in the game, the card can be completely useless. Would these games work better with a tiered card system, like 7 Wonders, or a draw 2 or 3 and discard down to 1, or do you have another idea? I'm about to house rule Tapestry to draw 2 cards or discard 1, or have 3 face up, like in Wingspan. I wouldn't blame you at all for that. It's really interesting you point this out. There is no two ways about it. I mean, if there is one thing, if there's a tell that Jamie Stegmaier has as a designer, it's that he loves to have wildly super powerful swingy cards that if you play it at the right time, boom! It's like an atomic bomb went off and it shifts everything. And I totally get why. That's a really cool, it's cool when those moments come off. But the downside to it, as you point out, is, yeah, but you know what? 75% of the time, I can't use this, and it's just dead weight, and I feel like an idiot taking an action to go and draw a card. And so what's up with that? Here's the thing. You could definitely do what you're talking about. Put 3 on the table, there's always one to get, or whenever you get one, draw 2, keep 1, or something like that. But the thing is, those are so powerful. And if you get that, still, there's going to be a case where, what do you know? You drew 2, and they were both awesome for you, and you kept 1. And I drew 2, and they were both still crap for me, and I kept 1, and it was useless. I think what's more important, what Tapestry does is, they give you ways to have other uses for those cards. Specifically, there are certain spots on progress tracks where you go, I can come here? Hey, I can turn 5 cards into whatever it is, I don't remember, 3 cards into progress on another track or something like that. I think that's the way you do it. I will agree, Tapestry could use more of that. There's a few of them, and there could be more. Opportunities to use those cards that are in your hand that are dead to you because they're worthless as something else. Even if they were Gosh, what could they be? There could be a lot of things. I mean, they could just be, hey, you know what? At the end of the game, every 3 tapestry cards you have are worth a victory point, or 10 victory points, or something like that. Because I mean, a well-used tapestry card could be worth 20 points to you. So, I mean, I would want to see something like that because, just reducing the randomness, but still leaving it there doesn't solve the problem. The way to solve the problem is to ensure that there's always a use for them. Like in Castles of Burgundy, my top 10, Stefan Feld classic. Hey, you roll the dice. Sometimes the dice are nice, sometimes they're not. If they're not good, you can always use them to buy very valuable workers that will allow you to control the dice and are worth victory points at the end of the game. I'd like to see something like that. That they're multi-use cards in that they all have a, what it could be? Here's my rule. I'm making it up. I think this could make Tapestry a better game. You can use 3 Tapestry cards anytime you want. You can discard them to get any one resource you want. Any food or, science or whatever. And, so like, I got all these cards, like, because sometimes you could win or lose based on, I just need one more brown cube. I think that's the way you do it. I think that means, every one of these is worth a third of a cube. And so if I've gotten 2 or 3 of them, and I'm never going to play this, but another cube means basically another turn or another half turn in this game. I think something like that. I don't know what the number would be. Maybe it's every 5 cards could be a cube or something like that. Because I would worry that would throw off the balance. And I know, balance? Jamie Stonemaier. But that would be how I'd approach it. Tapestry, honestly, Tapestry I think is better than Viticulture because there are at least some ways to make use of those cards. Viticulture was like, this is a great game if I'd drawn it at the beginning of the game, but I drew it at the end. It's useless, and there's nothing I can do with it at all. Viticulture, I think, needs something like that too, to really upper echelon those games. I mean, there's a reason I love these games, but they do not make it into my top 25, and you're articulating why. Just every 3 cards, or 5 cards, or 4 cards is worth a cube. That would, chef's kiss, fix it. Not that I think it's broken, because it would not invalidate those big, swingy, exciting moments you get. So anyway, that's how I would approach Tapestry. Give it a try. Let me know what you think. I'm really curious. Okay. Hi, Nelson. Hi, Rahdo, says Nelson. He doesn't say that. He probably did. I copy and paste out just the questions, and I leave out all the other stuff when I compile my big list of questions for the podcast. Nelson has 3 questions. Question number 1. Is Aeon's End, Gens, and my favorite cooperative deck builder? And if not, what is? I think it is, but you know what, Nelson? You can find out yourself by going to ranked.rahdo.com. But tell you what, I will save you the trouble. Let's do that myself. Let's go, because my keyboard is not dead now. Ranked.rahdo.com. All I have to do is type in RA because I go to this so often. All right, let's find Aeon's End on this list. And now let's move up and see if a higher ranked on it, is there another, what was it? Cooperative deck builder. I don't think there's going to be. Nope, Roll Camera is a cooperative, but it's a dice worker placement. And then Forbidden Planet is a pandemic co-op. Project Elite is a running around rolling dice co-op. Is the Maracaibo expansion, does it get co-op? I'm not sure, but we'll leave it off the list. Roll for the Galaxy, Dominion, Keyflower, Peloponnese. No, that's it. Yep, it's my highest ranked. There you go. Oh, no, it's not. No, it's not. Because my number 2 ranked game of all time, eclipsed only by Pandemic, my number 2, Pandemic's my number 1, my number 2 is Shadowrun Crossfire. So, Nelson, Shadowrun Crossfire, or Dragonfire, if you seek that out instead, is my number 1 of all time cooperative deck builder. Right. Back to you. Okay, number 2. How many Aeon's End, it looks like you were expecting Aeon's End to be my number 1. Oopsie. How many Aeon's End core expansions do I have? How do I organize them? Do I mix them together or do they stay in the original box? Do I use baggies to organize cards? Oh, should I grab it? Where is it? Oh, there it is. Well, this is a podcast. You can't see it. But okay, there are some people watching. Hold on a second. Let me go grab it. And actually, you know, I'm very thirsty. Let me get a drink of water. And then let me go snag it. Oh. So, for folks who listen to the podcast, in case you didn't know, it does appear on YouTube. And so if you want to see what I'm describing, you can go to, there will actually be a link in your podcast notes saying, if you'd like to watch this instead of listen to it, there's a link so you can come see it. Here's my storage. I have Aeon's End A New Age that is completely stock full, and I have Aeon's End Legacy that is super heavy. And if I open them up, what you'll see is I just sorted them all into their individual things. I am using the various and sundry life meter dials I have to separate the different categories so there isn't cross-contamination. And so one box is just nothing but all of the cards, all sorted out into little, broken out by expansion, basically. And then the other box is all of the tokens. And then all of the basic mana or spark cards, whatever they're called, and all of the the player boards and boss boards all stacked up into one pile. It all barely fits. Everything. And this, to answer your other question, this is everything. This is everything that's come out for Aeon's End up until now, except for Legacy 2, or the new Legacy game, because that isn't available yet. All of it fits in there. No more will fit. But when I get the Legacy 2 box, I imagine I will replace my Aeon's End New Age box with the Legacy 2 box, and the whole thing will fit in Legacy 1 and 2 with my makeshift sorting method. One thing I should point out, this might be of interest as well. Here's another thing. You might say, oh, well, still, that's a lot of cards. How do you keep them all separated? Here's my trick, folks. Here's my secret sauce. Here's Gathering Will, grabbed at random. All of the Gathering Will cards in a single sleeve. I just get sleeves that are big enough to be able to hold 5 or 10 cards. And so all of these are just, when I'm going to grab, I just grab some different cards. And then when I'm done, I just put them back into the areas they came from. It's very quick and easy. I do the exact same trick for Dominion, and I have all of Dominion basically in 2 big Dominion boxes the same way. I never sleeve my cards, except for when I sleeve groups of 10 or 12 in Dominion and Aeon's End, so I can keep them all separated and nice and neat in my super collection. That's how I do it. And all right. And finally, Nelson says, what's our favorite mage duo combo? And what nemesis to play against? Oh man, Nelson, I would have to play the game a lot more to be able to say that. Every time new Aeon's End content comes in, Jen and I, we play it, we enjoy it, I do a video about it, and then it goes on the shelf, it goes into these boxes, and then I subsequently play 200 other games that year, and I do not remember the specifics. So I am not, I wish I could answer that question, but I am not enough. I love this game, but I would have to play it a lot more to be able to make those kinds of informed decisions. So I cannot answer. But those, at least 2 out of 3 questions ain't bad, right? Okay. And now, I think this is our last one, Jack. And it's not normal Jack. This is not a Jack attack. Jack T says, I've enjoyed your preview of Verdant. I knew this was coming. Verdant. My whole life, I have said this word wrong, and I use this word a lot because I've always loved green, growing lush forests. It's always been my favorite place to be in my entire life, and I learned the word as a very young age, and I've always thought I was very smart for using it. In my whole life, I'm so embarrassed now that I've said Verdant, and it's not. It's Verdant. Am I saying it right now? Verdant. Anyway. Jack enjoyed my preview of Verdant as well as my enthusiasm for Luna Capital. Jack wonders, or thinks that I've just, in describing these games, as well as Cascadia, that I've defined these games as entangled or entwined drafting. Yes, I think we do need a name for it. I forget, Seth Jaffe, developer of Tasty Minstrel Games, formerly, he's the one who first told me that. That's how he refers to it as, and I thought that's brilliant. That's perfect. Entwined or entangled drafting. There's multiple things. They're tangled up, and when you grab one thing, you got to grab all the other stuff, whether you like it or not. I think that's one of my favorite mechanisms now, because it's really been exploding. There's been a bunch of games over the last couple of years, and you've mentioned several, including Verdant. And Verdant has taken it the furthest in terms of doing really interesting things with it. And if you don't know what that is, folks, you can watch my run-through and see why I rated it so highly. Anyway, Jack continues. Jack doesn't know how I'd rate Verdant since I only played a pre-release copy. Right, it's true. I don't rank games until I play the final retail version. Based on what I've said of the 3 he mentioned, how do I compare my enjoyment of all of these entangled, entwined drafting games? You mentioned Cascadia, you mentioned Verdant, and you mentioned Luna Capital. You could also mention Boss Monster. I'm sorry, not Boss Monster, Overboss. And I know there's other ones as well. Anyway, though. Beyond overall gameplay, how interesting and effective do I find the implementation of this new, drafting mechanism among these games? Have I missed any other, asked Jack, entwined, entangled drafting games that should be considered as well? Well, first of all, let me answer that. Because yes, somebody on Board Game Geek, I'm almost positive it was Peacope, username Peacope, very prolific, a really great guy. I would love to meet him someday in real life. I think he pointed out to me when I was at one point or other talking about how much I enjoy entwined drafting. He said, well, what about Vikings? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about Vikings for years. Vikings, which came out, I think, in 2007, maybe? Something like that. I'm going to look it up. When did Vikings come out? Or Die Wikinger in German. Vikings. Yep, 2007. From Michael Kiesling, not from Creamy and Cage. That's the OG. That is the big daddy entwined drafting. I'm not saying it's the first one to do it, but it was the first one I ever played it at. And I mean, when he said this, I went back and looked at my video because I hadn't thought about this game for years. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. And even back in 2007, it was doing cool stuff with entwined drafting that people aren't doing today. So, first of all, I'm sad. I'm very sad it's out of print. Who is it? Hans and Gluck. Come on, Hans and Gluck. Entwined drafting is all the rage these days. Everybody loves Michael Kiesling because of Azul. Bring it back, Vikings. It's the perfect time for it. And you'll give it a big, lush, lavish reprint and all that because it's a really cool take. Actually, okay, now I'm curious. I'm going to see, how does this rank for me? All right. I go back to the board. I'm going to go back to ranked.rahdo.com. Or no, I'm not going to go to, I'm going to go to games.rahdo.com. Which is another version of all my stuff, but actually with numbers. Vikings is my number 67 of all time. Overboss is, Overboss is my number 145. Let's see, you asked about Luna. Luna is my number 113. And I have not rated Verdant yet. Verdant! I have not rated Verdant yet, because I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Yep, there are Verdant. Yep, there it is on the list because I've run through it, but I don't actually have a copy. I would probably... Verdant I would put in the same range as Luna Architect. But Vikings, above all. Vikings, you have to check it out. I'm sorry. Maybe it's something you can play on Board Game Arena, or what's the French... Le Boute Jou or something like that. I forget the name of the French equivalent of Board Game Arena. I bet you there's some way you can play it digitally online today to see what it is. And oh my gosh, I have kept my copy. I'm so glad I have all these years. It makes me, just talking about it and thinking about it, makes me want to play it again. I have not played this game probably since probably in over a decade. But I kept, no, that's not true. It came out in 2007. I probably played it, when did I film it? Hold on, let's look at that. Vikings. Right. I put that video up. It was like my second or my third video. Yeah, this was like in my first 5 videos I ever did. I put it up on 2012. And chances are I probably have not played the game since then. Even back then, even when I was starting out, I was like, oh, well, I'd like to keep playing this now. But I filmed it, and I feel like I should play a game so I could film it. So why go back to stuff, that even all the way back, a decade ago now. One of the first videos I ever did. It's such a great game and a really cool, interesting twist. It does some stuff that nobody else is doing now, and I think maybe everybody's forgotten about it, but Peak Hope didn't, and I now haven't, and I recommend it. Except you can't get it. Sorry about that. But yeah, I'm very impressed by Verdant. Verdant's twist is that, there's still the packets, but there's one thing in each packet that is entwined, a thing that you have to take that's entwined with 2 different things, and you get to pick what you want to take. Do I take the card above it or the card below it when I take the tile? That's really clever. That's doing more with the system, maybe less than what Vikings does, but more than what the other games you mentioned are. Well, no, Luna Architect does a thing where it does this escalation thing too, so that's actually really cool also. Or Luna Capital. But if anything, the Verdant approach actually makes it more forgiving. It's a more laid back version. But I think they had to, because the tile laying you do in that game is just some of the harshest, most, tension filled, restrictive stuff I've ever seen. So it kind of makes sense that they kind of eased off on how tension filled they make the draft so that they can make the tile laying where the real rubber hits the road and it really becomes a tough choices. These are all great. I love this mechanism so much. It's so simple and so pure, and I cannot recommend enough going back, if you can find a way to do it, and checking out Vikings from Michael Kiesling. And I think that's it, folks. We are done with the questions. And now, I don't remember if I've been going so long, I don't remember. I mentioned up front, I'm streaming this live. There is an audience of about 81 people at this second who have been watching, I think just rapt attention, and I'm going to pause for a second and see if they've got any more questions they'd like to ask that we can throw on the podcast as well. So hang on, everybody, and we'll be right back. Okay, folks, it looks like we do have some questions coming in. Let's start with Games and Grub says that they're looking to pick up Corrosion, but are worried that it will run long for their group's taste. How long did our initial plays take? I'm really glad you asked that, actually, Games and Grub. I on my list of things to do is go back and do an updated final thoughts for Corrosion, because after Jen and I, we played it a few times. I filmed my run through of it, and I did a solo run through, if I recall correctly. I put my final thoughts up, and then almost immediately I started hearing from people, including friends, personal friends, that I tried it and the game was like too long, a 2-player game. We got to the 3-hour mark and we realized it was never going to end, and we just quit. And so I've heard a lot of that, and I need to go back and update my final thoughts to clarify something. Corrosion is a really cool engine builder, but that's almost beside the point. It's an engine builder where your engines are constantly corroding away. Corrosion is a race game, and it needs to be played as such, because the game won't be over until players grab all of there's like Race for the Galaxy style victory point chips. Once they've all been collected, that's what triggers the end of the game. And here's the thing, and I've heard this happening, and I can totally understand why it would happen. This is an engine building game where you build lots of little engines, then they corrode away, and then you build more engines, and you're building. You can get into a grind where, okay, I'm building engines to make more engines to make more engines, instead of building engines, running them into the dirt so that I can get points and rush the end of the game. It's very possible, because time in this game does not move forward unless players choose to do it. It's very interesting. It's a time-sensitive game, like Zolkin, where the passage of time affects everything, but players choose when they want time to move forward instead of it happening automatically at the end of every round or something like that. And what that means is players can get into a mode where, look, I'm just going to hire a whole bunch of engineers. I'm going to hire a ton of them, and then I'm going to play all of them, and then I'm going to use the resources I got from them to recall them so I can play them again and get into this loop without ever moving forward time. And one of the things that happens every time time moves forward 4 times, one of those little victory point chips gets grabbed. And the thing is, you need to be playing this game fast. I guarantee, if you play the game where you're just trying to do maximum efficiency, build super engines, and get to where, look, I can reuse all of my engineers 5 times before I have to move time forward. If you do that, if you spend all your time doing that, if you're playing against me, you will lose, because I'll build fast, dirty engines, and I will move forward time all the time and burn those engines to the ground, corrode them away to nothing, so I can just snag all the points. And the game will be over, and I will win. And you will have been playing a game that was going to take you 5 hours, and I was playing a game that took an hour. Because this is a game that, if you play smartly, a 2-player game shouldn't take you more than an hour, really. But the game does nothing to incentivize that. There's no helpful hint in the rulebook warning players. I think the developers just assumed that, everybody, of course, will do this. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you go watch my run-through of Corrosion, I played solo. If anybody tries this game solo and they play in a way that would take them 3+ hours to finish, they will get destroyed in the solo game, because the solo game replicates a player who is moving. You have a fixed, I think, if I recall correctly, if you play the solo game, you will play for exactly 11 rounds, and that's it. Now, playing against human players can make moves that means, we'll play for literally 50 rounds, and the game still won't be over. But that's not the fault of the game. It's the fault of the players. And if just one player decides, well, screw that, I'm not going to be hyper efficient. I'm going to burn my engineers. I'm going to corrode my machines I'm building so I can just grab points, they will run the game clock out and they will win. So it's a big oversight of the developers not to have foreseen the fact that people outside of their playtest groups would make this reasonable assumption. And that has led to some confusion. And I thank you, Games Grub, because it's on my list of things to do. I've forgotten. I do need to update my final thoughts to make that clear. And now there's another thing that's happening too. I actually complained in my final thoughts that it would be great. The first act of the game is kind of a slow ramp up, and I thought it'd be really great if everybody had like starting player powers or an engine they already had that they could use for a while. They're releasing a promo pack that does exactly that. Everybody gets a unique starting player engine that kind of ramps up the game and gets it going quicker. So that's coming soon. I don't know any particulars of how it's going to be made available. I assume you'd be able to buy it for $5 on their website or something like that, or get it from them at conventions. I don't know. That that's still early days. There's nothing final. They did show me pictures of them. I'm like, oh yeah, that would definitely speed the game up. So I got to see a little advanced, but I can't show any of that stuff. But anyway, yeah. Corrosion will play as fast or as slow as players want it to. And that's a problem. For players who decide to play really, really slow. Me, my natural inclination as a player is to always race. I am always, forget about those two birds in the bush. I want this one in the hand right now. And played like that, it'll zip, it'll sing. All right, good question. Let's see. Next up. Okay. Holly No More asks, what board game trends do I see becoming more popular in the future? Actually, this question came up in the last R&R, and the only thing I could think of, I mean, this is something I'm not good at prognostications or anticipating where things go. I mean, heck, go back into this podcast and listen to my thoughts about what the future of crypto and Bitcoin and chains are. Obviously, I was just kind of, I'm completely out of my mind there, so I'm not really a good one for administration. But one thing that I'm hoping, and I suspect we're going to be seeing more and more of as a direction from publishers, is more focus on inclusivity and positive representations of previously marginalized or vanished subject matter and people in games. And I'm very, very excited about that. I think that the board game industry is changing. Publisher Board and Dice are leading the charge. Cranio Creations did a great job with Gollum last year. And I think, not that there aren't better things that could be done, but I think the industry is definitely taking steps, and we're learning to be more inclusive and not just, hey, let's just read a couple of paragraphs in Wikipedia and say, okay, we know everything we need to know about this to make a game. Not good enough. And I do think that's something that's changing moving forward, and it makes me happy. Alrighty. Let's see here. Duck of Death 5 asks, how, you can see things change now when I'm answering Twitch questions and I don't have people's real names. How accurately can I judge Jen's enjoyment of a game just by reading the rules? I can judge my own enjoyment very well. Very, very well. I mean, because I can read the rules, I can get a really good sense. I will be honest. Jen still surprises me. The most recent surprise I got from her was when we happened to play Coatl, and I found out, oh my gosh, she loves abstract games. I thought she was kind of like me, thematic or theme or bust. If it's abstract, I got no time for it. Turns out she loves them, and so it's ironically, sadly, I have passed over so many excellent abstract games that I could have covered over the years because I didn't know that Jen would have loved to give them a try. Even though if I wouldn't have enjoyed them or kept them, I would have kept them. I would have tried them for her. So and so she still surprised me on a regular basis. In fact, a few months ago, maybe sometime last year, we started a new monthly show that's only available for Patreon backers. And although you can listen to it, did I mention right up front that, hey, I'm putting all podcast stuff on the Patreon? That includes this new show called Jen Jogs, where at the end of every month, I jog her memory about the games we played over the preceding 4 weeks, and she just gives her opinions about them. And I am constantly, this is the most I've ever had her talk about games, and she is surprising me left, right, and center. So I will be honest, my answer to your question is, not very accurately at all. She is constantly surprising me. But what do you call it? The Jen Jog show that we've started doing is really helping me a lot in fine-tuning when I read rulebooks to decide if we're going to cover it, so that I'm getting less misses than I used to. And yeah. Okay. Question, says Corthane. Since the world is moving more and more towards digital platforms, do I think the print and play platform will continue to grow, or will physical products stay king? Well, the thing is, Corthane, I don't know how old you are, but if you're my age or younger, in our lifetimes, I believe 3D printers will be as common in every house in first world countries, in Western countries, as inkjet printers are today. It's going to take like 20 years or something like that. But in 20 years from now, and just the way you say, oh, everybody has, sometimes they have to print stuff out or make photocopies, everybody's going to have a 3D printer in their house. Because that will become so easy, so ubiquitous, so good to use. And that will actually tie back into all that NFT stuff I was talking about, where people currently, people make stuff for 3D printers and they just put them out there and they get nothing for it. Maybe they get a little, hey, could you give me a coffee or something like that, which is an online, kind of fundraising platform. When everybody has 3D printers and NFTs allow you to maintain ownership of your original thing, then I can imagine, I don't know exactly how it'll work, but I can imagine things will change. And to your question about print and plays, I think it is not outside the realm of possibility. Hey, that question about Cool Mini or not, maybe this decision they're doing right now leads 20 years from now to zombie-side 15 being something that you no longer buy from a store. You download board games and you print them out yourself. That is definitely a possibility. Or you buy Zombicide 15 and it comes with cardboard chits, but and cardboard chits that represent the zombies. And if you want, they say, hey, look, here's our NFT to be able to go on ahead and separately get the 3D models. Because in 20 years, the best, highest quality models that you can get today and paint and all that, those will be as simple as anybody just saying, oh, I'm just going to download a file and print these out myself. That is the future. That's a far off future, 20 years from now, but that is going to be the change, and it changes everything. I mean, we are one step away from replicators, Star Trek replicators in our house. I don't have to go down to Ace Hardware to buy a tool. I will literally print this tool out. And that is going to be such a fundamental societal sea change. In the same way that driverless cars and UBI will fundamentally change everything, 3D printers are going to do the same thing as well. Mark my words. And don't count on it, because what do I know? I'm just some guy. All right, scrolling along, let's look for another question. Okay, Nazgoth says, we know you often give feedback to designers after a run-through. What would you say is the game that went in production with most of my advice integrated? Oh, that's easy, Gloomhaven. You're right, that does happen a lot. I've made significant changes. I would say probably the publisher where I have the most consistent impact is Red Raven Games, because I often get to play Ryan Lockett's games early, and Ryan is very interested in talking to me about design. Big changes were made in Sleeping Gods that directly came from me as an example. But by far, second to none would have to be Gloomhaven. The original Gloomhaven, I was one of the first people to play it. I mean, it was a big video for me. And Isaac Childress has gone on record saying that he doesn't think he would have had the success he has had as a publisher if it weren't for me covering his games early on, because I was a really huge booster. And after Jen and I, or actually mostly after I mostly played Gloomhaven and did my video of it, I had like a ridiculously epic long 3 or 4 hour Skype call with Isaac, just telling him a million ideas and this and that and the other, and a lot of that stuff made it into the game. So I think that would probably be the biggest single game I've had the most impact on. And now, in Frosthaven, the Gloomhaven 2, there's a whole mission designed by me, which is so weird and far out and funky, I'm afraid it's going to explode, but we'll see how it goes. Alrighty. Alright, scrolling, looking for questions. Oh, is that a question mark? Alright. Okay, no clue what's happening asks, and I like his question based on his or her username, their username. No clue what's happening asks, how do I keep all the rules straight in my head for all the games in my collection? No clue what's happening has a third of my collection, can barely remember the games I learned back in November. Hey, what makes you think I'm any different, man? Have you seen how many goofs I make in my run-throughs? A sizable portion of rules goof I make in run-throughs, it is often the case, and Paulo can see this sometimes because he like checks me back and back, that if there were like a few games that I played all like in a tight period of time and I had to film them all really quick, you will see sometimes I make mistakes where, oh, I drew 5 cards and kept 1. Yeah, that was from the other game. And I did it in this game. And now it didn't matter. Instead of just drawing a card blind, which is what the real rule is, instead I drew 5 and kept 1. The important thing was I still then played the card correctly. I still demonstrated what the game feels like to play, but I made a mistake. Sometimes I mix these games up in my head. To be fair, most of the goofs I make are just because I'm a bit scatterbrained. And when I am filming a run through, I am mostly thinking about, right, what decisions can I make that seem strategically sound and yet will let me demonstrate a new feature of the game? Because I'm just trying to, in as fast a time as possible, show you as many different avenues of the game as possible. That's why I always hate it when I find myself in a game where, okay, on my turn I do this, and then on Jen's turn, she does this. You will notice that almost never happens in my run-through, even in a game where it might happen a lot in real life. Because, hey, that first few rounds, everybody just gets some resources. I will try to say, oh, sorry, honey pie, I already grabbed resources. You're going to do something else so I can demonstrate things to people. And because I'm focusing on that, and I'm focusing on the camera, and I'm focusing on the tech, and I'm trying to remember the game, and I'm trying to keep it separated from the 5 other games I played over the last week, sometimes I make goofs. But honestly, I make goofs on games I played 12 times, 100 times. I still make goofs. I am just a bit prone. And yeah, If I were to play a game, if I were to go and play, I'm literally just looking at my wall. If I were to play, what's the oldest game on my wall that I haven't played the longest? Euphoria. If I were to play Euphoria from Stonemaier Games, it's exposed because I pulled Tapestry off the board. I wouldn't remember anything about it. Here's what I would do. I would actually literally go back and watch my run through of it at like 3x speed to kind of jog my memory, and that would let me skim the rules, and then I'd be ready to play. That's how I do it. Now, that's a game I haven't played for a while. I haven't played My Farm Shop for 6 or 8 months. In that case, I think I would just have to skim the rules. That one's much more fresh in my mind, but not fresh enough to sit down and play at all. Okay. Nuke Redsen says, alrighty, as with movies and computer games, do I think that board games will become mainstream or will it remain a hobby? No, I think we are growing all the time. I mean, everybody in the world almost has a preconceived notion about what board games are. And I certainly did. Whatever it was, 12 years ago, I had that same notion. And slowly but surely, almost on a generational shift level, we are seeing the industry grow and expand because more and more people are coming to realize, oh, board games are not what I thought they were. I thought they were 2 things. Maybe, depending on who you're talking to, I thought they were 2 or 3 things. They were Monopoly Candyland, they were gambling, poker stuff, and maybe, depending on who you're talking to, they might think, oh, or they're miniature war games, really geeky things, and maybe, depending on or they're Magic the Gathering. That's pop culture awareness of board games. But more and more people are thinking, oh, and then there's that Catan game. And, whatever that is. And they don't realize, oh, Catan represents an entire $1 billion a year industry now. But over time, it is becoming more and more common. What do I watch? What do I watch? There's a really great comedy show on Peacock called AP Bio. It is about a rude, self-centered, narcissistic philosophy writer who ends up having to teach advanced placement bio to kids in some town in the middle of nowhere. And it's a great show, kind of dark humor, but really kind of upbeat too. It's a really interesting mix. Sergeant Glenn Howerton, really enjoyed it a lot. This last season, I was so surprised when there was an entire episode devoted to how Mr. Griffin, the lead character's name, was a diehard Twilight Imperium 4 fan. And one of his more geeky students, who he always gives a tough time to, turns out was a Twilight 4 fan as well. And there was like the whole B-plot was about trying to get the coach and everybody else to play Twilight Imperium 4. And now here's the deal. It was just a funny episode, but there's a not insignificant number of people who said, what the heck is Twilight Imperium 4? Was that just something they were making up? Is that like something like Cones of Dunshire? Except they didn't do a Cones of Dunshire. They used literally Twilight Imperium 4 and made inside joke references that only TI4 fans would know. That's the tip of the spear. More of that is coming. Code names. I mentioned Catan. I should also mention code names. On more than one occasion, I have been out and about in the world and I'm wearing a Rahdo shirt and people say, hey, what's that? I don't recognize that brand. I say, oh, that's me. Oh, what do you do? I do YouTubes about board games. Board games? Are you serious? And then they say, you know what? Oh, that's right. You know what? There is a board game we really like. It's that one where you put all the cards out and you have to give a clue. What is that game? And I say, Code Names. And they say, yeah, Code Names. Code Names is so huge. I mean, I say this on the week that I was sponsored by CGE, but I cannot stress how monstrously huge and, cross-cultural. I mean, that's just bleeding into everything. And, in our lifetimes, it's just going to continue to grow and grow and grow, and it's very, very exciting. So, no, I do not think we are going to go quiet into that good night. We are going to keep on growing. And obviously, as sad as it is, the pandemic, as much as it destroyed a lot of hopes and dreams of a lot of publishers, it helped a lot of publishers too, because, hey, what's better than a board game when you're stuck in quarantine? Alrighty. Let's see here. What else have we got here? Some love for AP Bio, it turns out, in the chat. All right. No clue what's happening. Asked another question. Am I concerned about Asmodee snagging everything up? It's not great, but am I concerned? No. Hold on a second. Let me look at my top 10, my top 25. I don't even have to do this. Here's the deal. If you go look at my top 10 games of 2021, or if you go look at my top 25 games of 2022, you will find a very small percentage of those games are coming from Asmodee. As fast as Asmodee wants to grab everything up, Kickstarter is the true game changer of the industry. Kickstarter is empowering so many people to be able to make new games. Gloomhaven would not exist if it weren't for Kickstarter. Asmodee would never have greenlit, ever, a Gloomhaven or a Kingdom Death Monster or so many other games. So yeah, Asmodee can keep on trying to gobble stuff up, but more new things will grow in their stead. And honestly, it's generally those other new things that are just coming out of nowhere and getting funding because of Kickstarter, which is where all the real excitement comes from as far as I'm concerned. So no, I am not worried. All right. Okay. And I think I have caught up with the chat questions. Thank you, chat, for giving me some very good, thought-provoking questions. And folks, I think that is going to be it. That is another... No, it's not another. We've just now finished the game section. So if you hold on a little bit, I'll be right back. I'll be saying goodbye to the live chat and hello to Jen, and we'll get into the personal Q&As right after this. Hey everybody, welcome back. Jen is here. Hi, Honey Pie. There's her hand on screen if you're watching instead of listening. And we're going to hit the personal questions and answers now. Hey, Honey Pie.
Hello.
How are you feeling?
Good.
That's surprising considering she just went under the laser knife for like the 6th time. Or maybe the 7th time, because she once again had her eyes lasered just yesterday.
Yep.
They just keep on finding more and more problems, and it just keeps on not taking, but she continues to be hopeful. How long ago did you get the first one done?
2 years.
For over the last 2 years, Jen has had her eyeballs opened with... do they use lasers, or are they... No, they use the lasers for the adjustment. They're using one of the physical saws to open your eyes.
Same flap.
Oh, right, yeah.
The same flap.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so back when I got it done when I was like 25, that was all they had. Mm-hmm. But actually, the place now would use a laser if I had fresh eyes. Right. But I don't. He just uses the same old flap.
Yeah, the epidemial cells, which is the slimy epithelial cells, which is the slimy surface over your eyes. Those cells keep getting into the flap and grow inside her eye. Yeah. And that ends up screwing with her vision. Yep. And so they have to keep opening her up and cleaning her out and saying, okay, we'll try it this way now. And for folks who are saying 6 times, isn't it time to get a second opinion? We have discussed that, but on the other hand, I mean, this is an incredibly highly rated office, and that they've been really good about. I mean, they haven't balked at charging or anything like that. So,
and they know the
they know the history. Yeah.
So I think we finally got it though, because I went in yesterday and I expressed again a couple of reservations, and he said, "Well, we'll measure you again." When you come in, and he was gonna do like move my vision in further, and I was like, I don't think that's the problem. It's that I don't have a focal point, and so he gave me a different kinds of lens to see, does this help? And I said, yes, that helps. Can we do that times 2? And he said, yes, we'll do something. Let me do the math.
All right.
So I'm very hopeful, but right now I've got contact lenses in to hold my flaps down.
Right, which is another thing. In the past, they've only had to keep you in for like, what,
I think
3 days at the most, or 2 or 3 days? This time they said you got to keep the contacts in for a solid week, right? 7 days or something?
5 days.
5 days.
Yep.
To help the healing process, which means she's going to be walking around in the whole world is going to be out of focus for a
bit of
week.
a fog.
Yeah, the fog. So anyway, but nobody asked questions about that. But
but I'm excited because it's going to get, this is it.
And it's probably just well anyway because we got space to fill, because there were a lot less emails this month than in previous months, so we're otherwise going to get through this fairly quick.
Great.
There's no game questions for you. There were very few for me. So we'll get right to the personal questions, starting with Gerald, who wonders, how was Christmas or the holidays? Were there any gifts given between the 3 of us? And no, there was no gift giving. My mom wanted, I didn't tell you this. My mom talked to me. She was very, very keen on giving you a gift. Jen has sleeping issues, and one of the things she does, you've stopped using it. You had this gigantic super wedge pillow and a body size pillow, and it was trying to help you with your slightly arthritic shoulder or something that. And you've stopped using it. But anyway, Mom had seen some infomercial about some other type of pillow that looks like a regular pillow, but then it has kind of like an H superimposed on top of it with raised stuff, so it cradles your head or something. And she was inclined to get you one of those because she knows you've tried different things. And she talked to me about it, but she pretty much talked herself out because she figured, you know what, Jen probably has looked at these and decided she doesn't want it. So in the end, she decided not to get that for you, but she was very, very close to pulling that trigger.
That was nice of her to think of me.
Yep. But yeah, we're really not big gift givers. About the extent of our holiday celebrations was we have like these 2 or 3 of these net Christmas lights that you can just throw on a bush. So we threw them on the bushes in front of our house, and Jen has, or was that Mom's electric tree? My mom had a small electric tree that Jen pulled out of mothballs and put on the dining room table for a week. It's now gone. Although the net lights are still out on the front in front of the house.
That's because I think lights can stay up all of January.
Yeah.
We all need a little bit of extra light in January, don't we?
Indeed.
Yes.
And so yeah, that was about it. Anna, do you have anything to say about the holidays?
Well, we're not gifty people, but I did make a nice dinner, and
Yeah.
I think that was nice to get together and share food and
Yeah.
all that. Spend a little time together.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I guess we don't have kids, so there's just not an impetus for getting everything all, dolled up and decorated up. And
Hold on a second, folks. We'll be right back. Daisy is barking. If I can pause, gotta go investigate. Guess what, folks? False alarm, as always. But anyway, I'm sorry. You were saying
we were not under siege.
no.
There were no attackers approaching.
Yep.
But anyway, and then also with my parents too. It was really nice to get together with them, and I think we got together at Cheesecake Factory.
Yes, that was
with them.
not particularly holiday festive, but it was nice to see them too.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's nice to share food. I like sharing food.
Indeed.
I've always liked sharing food. In fact, my favorite kind of foreign food is Ethiopian food, and that actually comes on a big shared plate. Mm-hmm. So you literally are sharing food at that point.
Okie doke. Yes, but we didn't do that for Christmas.
No, we didn't do that for Christmas.
No. Let's see. Next up, honey, if you lived on a farm in Ireland, which dog would you add to your family? And there are links for red setters, Irish wolfhounds, or Kerry blues. Do you need to see pictures of these? Because Gerald provided pictures of them.
Well, that's nice. Let's have pictures then.
All right. Let's see. Control. And
I know what a red setter looks like. I know what an Irish wolfhound looks like.
I know what an Irish wolfhound looks like, definitely. I do not know what a red setter or a Kerry blue is.
Yeah.
Hold on, folks. The links are coming. Very slowly, incredibly slowly. I am so close to just abandoning Chrome forever. It has just become such a big, bloated nightmare of garbage. All right, let's go on ahead and hide the word. Not that button, that button.
Why did he choose these particular 3?
He just, obviously, he did a search for, I don't know, maybe they're traditional Irish farm dogs. He did not say. He just said, these are your 3.
These are my
the
3
old
dogs.
wolfhound, which is, spoiler alert, for a classic Sherlock Holmes novel, also known as the Hound of the Baskervilles. Isn't that how that... I shouldn't say anymore. So Irish wolfhounds are huge and shaggy in the extreme. Yep. Kerry blues are very silly looking, at least with their official weird...
Yeah, but they're sort of the medium-sized dog.
And then a red setter is just...
a little bit bigger.
An adorable, wonderful looking... kind of a golden retriever type thing, but very red and much more shaggy. Yeah. So, honey, pick one.
I'm going to go with Irish Farm. Wow. I think I'm going to go with the red one, the red setter.
The red setter?
Yep.
All right.
We had a neighbor in England, actually, who had one of these, and it was just such a gorgeous dog.
Oh, I know, yeah. Just these pictures are stunning.
Yeah. And do you remember he was training him for hunting?
No,
and we would just see him on the walks along the river.
Who are you talking about?
Oh, the guy with the red setter.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't know his name. Why would I know his name?
Just the dogs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you always go on about how you love Great Danes because they're so huge, so why not an Irish Wolfhound? Because they look like they get as big as a Great Dane.
Yeah, they certainly do. I think I just have a love affair with Great Danes.
Mm-hmm.
I like their houndiness. I like...
A Wolfhound is a hound, too? We're hounds.
Oh, I'm sorry. They're kind of scraggly looking. I like a smoother dog, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And the Kerry Blue?
They're beautiful. Yeah, I like that as well. But I'm thinking, I just really like the red coat. I've always loved red hair.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, those are saying dogs. So there you go, Gerald. The answer is the red setter in this incredibly scientific poll. All right, then we move on.
With nothing other to look at than looks.
Yep. Ben G says, given your experience driving around Europe in the bongo and otherwise, how different is the driving from country to country? And how does it compare to the U.S.? Was there anywhere that driving in a small camper van proved to be especially difficult?
I would say the most difficulty we had driving the bongo anywhere was up that mountain in, wasn't it Northern Wales? When we were trying to get up that, and I actually got out of the car. You remember which one I'm talking about? And Dad and Nance were with us.
I do not remember you getting out of the car. I mean, are you talking about that mountain pass?
Yeah.
That was in Wales?
Yeah.
Was that in Wales or was that in Scotland? No, I guess it was in Wales because your folks were there. That's true. And I don't think we ever went to Scotland with them. We just went to Wales with them.
Well, I went to Scotland with them.
Oh, well, I didn't.
You must have been working.
I'm sure I was working.
Yep.
So no, I tell the story. I remember I was driving and throughout all of our Welsh road trips, your folks sat all the way in the back, very million miles away from the front.
Well, that's because there was no middle seat.
Because we had the middle seat
out of the
van.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I just remember there was a windy road. But what was the problem?
It was extremely steep, and they had cut switchbacks in it. And at some point, I think we had to slow down or something because oncoming traffic or whatever. And then it was really hard to get going again, and it was so scary. I actually got out of the car. Because if the rest of us went over the cliff, you saw, I will remember you. I don't know. I was just so scared. It might have been that I was gonna maybe fend off traffic by holding up my hands or something. It was probably.
But had it gotten down to like a one-lane road or something like that? And...
Yeah, because of the way the switchbacks were. It was a really tight switchback, very, very, very steep.
I mean, when you say steep can mean two things, right? You're saying the grade that we were driving up or the steep cliff that we could fall off
of?
No,
the grade that we were driving up.
Okay.
Yeah, there wasn't any running off the road. It wasn't that kind of a thing.
I mean, we were driving a diesel, so I'm sure the diesel could have handled anything.
And we had a four-wheel drive.
So...
I don't know. All I can say is I remember it was very scary, and for some reason I got out of the car.
Okay.
So that was our worst bongo driving experience.
Although not our worst driving experience. I can't remember. What was the lake? It was a famous lake in Italy.
Como.
Is it Lake Como?
Yeah, Lake Como.
And that was in Italy, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So we, where were we? What were we doing?
We were there for Venice. And then a couple of days after spending time in Venice, we
did a week in Venice, and then we did kind of like a little drive of the surrounding environments and went to Lake Como and stayed at an inn there. So Lake Como is probably most famously not Casino Royale, but the movie after Casino Royale with the new Daniel Craig Bond. The first super high speed car chase at the opening of the movie is driving around that. And we drove around those. Again, very narrow roads and lots of tunnels you have to go through as you're driving around this insanely beautiful place. And there are times when the tunnels just get incredibly narrow. And the car we had just rented a small little compact because we always get the cheapest car we can whenever we rent. And they were out of it and they said, oh, you're in luck. We're going to give you a free upgrade to this ridiculously, monstrously huge 4-door, crazy, super deluxe sedan thing that was a Rolls-Royce type car. It wasn't a Rolls-Royce, but it was some. I'm sure it was
very fancy.
I'm sure it was an $80,000 car or something absolutely insane like that, and it was ginormous. It was ridiculous, and neither of us were happy about this. Can we just please have a tiny little car? Do you know where we're driving? And so, but that's all they had. So we drove it, and there was one particular tunnel.
Well, it was the first tunnel.
Was it the first tunnel?
Yeah, and we hadn't turned the lights on the car yet. And so you're approaching this tunnel, and it's Italy. So the tunnels are just raw rock.
Yeah.
They're not paved with lights on the inside and sidewalks going along it. Yeah. No. It's this raw rock.
And super narrow.
Dark. Yeah. There's no lights at all. Mm-hmm. And so we're approaching this, and probably 20 feet in front of the tunnel, there's a sign that says, turn your lights on. Uh-huh. And we're like, oh, where's the lights? And you were driving.
Yeah, I remember that.
And we're looking around for the lights, and we're slowing down and everything, but there's this bus coming at us from
we're inside the tunnel by now.
Yeah, and we're still looking for lights, and our lights are not on, and we're driving this black
in pitch blackness. And there is not enough room in this tunnel for us with this ginormous super sedan and this bus. It turns out there was, but it did not feel like
and
that.
we didn't have our lights on. We
Yeah.
could not see.
And so we were terrified, but I mean, we were still moving forward. And ultimately, I tried to get to as hard to the right to the rough wall as I could, and I hit the wall. I should say I scraped it. I rubbed it. And we're like, ah! How much is this going to cost us? And we made it through, and it was fine. When we came out the other side and we looked, and yeah, the front right fender had some scrapes on it, and that really sucked.
Yeah, and that was our first day of our trip with that. So, of course, we worried about that the whole rest of the time.
Yeah, how much are we going to have to pay for this? Because, there's no choice. It was our fault. Or it was my fault, I guess. But, yeah, it was just an insane conflux of unfortunate situation. We didn't want the car. It was... although it worked out, they never charged us.
Nope.
It was ridiculous, too. On the way home, we like kind of pulled over to the side of the road because there were some mud puddles. And we just kind of like splatted some mud puddles up on the thing to kind of like minimize the damage or the look of the damage.
Also, we had gone to an auto repair place in the couple of days that we had it.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
And it wasn't a repair place. It was a auto parts store.
Okay.
And I had bought some stuff.
And you tried to buff out the scratches. Yeah.
So
which helped, as I recall.
It did. Yeah. It probably reduced 50% of the problem, but still there was some.
I mean, there's no choice about it. But we got away with it. The perfect crime.
Our Italian job.
Yes, So those are probably our two most memorable moments driving around in Europe.
I would like to... You weren't with me. I was with Katrina and Alan, who were visiting from England in Malta. And at the time, we had a little convertible Mazda. Yeah. And it was a road on the map, so you thought there was a road there. But it was a cart track. Yes. But it was paved. But it was very, very narrow and, again, very turny. And I did not want to back down that road. Mm-hmm. So I actually did make it up this little twisty, but the problem was that the pavements in Malta, because it gets so hot there, they get slippery. And so essentially the wheels would just spin as I was trying to make it up this steep grade and make a turn as well. And obviously this happened a lot because the neighbors came out. Everybody came out of their houses and were standing on their patios or out in the road or whatever and just watching me. There was probably, I don't know, at least 6 or 8 people just standing around watching me trying to make it up
Where
this hill.
Where was this?
This was...
In Gozo?
Yeah, on Gozo.
I assume I know which one you're talking about. I know, some of those really bad back roads that were near where we were. Yeah. Because, Google Maps doesn't know any better, and will just tell you to take anything, even though I know there is no way you can consider this a road. Yeah. So anyway, the roads in Malta are, even the main roads are really problematic because somebody told me that they mix their concrete with lime because that's like that's pretty much the only commodity the country has. Yeah, plenty of lime. And so it makes really weak concrete compared to pretty much everywhere else in the world, and it just degrades super fast. So the roads everywhere in Malta are just awful because they just can't keep them up. And that's just the way roads are. Yeah. You don't know any better? We'll worry about the roads in the tourist areas, but the rest of the country, you're on your own. Yeah. All right, but anyway, I think we got away. There's 3 different countries with 3 different observations. Do you have anything to say in general? We did a couple of major road trips just driving through France and Germany and Prague and stuff like that. But the thing I remember most about all of that when you're just on the main motorways is... France has very, very cool signs alongside of the freeway. Yes, you're showing what's going on in the area. Yeah, they'll tell you, coming up the next exit, it's Saint Civil or whatever, but they will also just have really cool, iconic, custom, bespoke pictures, hand-drawn in iconographic language of what's there. And they were just so cool and charming. Mm-hmm. So that was always pretty cool. Never seen that anywhere else. France also has, they call them airs, AIRES. Yeah. And they're basically like our rest areas, but they're nicer. Mm-hmm. You are encouraged to stay overnight, and they've got showers, and they've got food. All free, and all free, and of course gas and everything. But it's just a place for people when they're traveling through the country. You could just pull over and stay there overnight if you want to, and you're welcome, and there's no danger or any weirdness or anything. So that was really cool. I loved France for that. Plus, of course, the food. Yeah. Germany was great. We've driven a lot in Germany, especially because one time we were going to Essen and missed our flight.
So,
because of the Gozo ferry, yeah.
because of the Gozo ferry. So we actually ended up having to fly to München and drive to Essen.
München. I believe you mean Munich, but you're going for the German. München. I believe that is München,
Yeah.
German for Munich, yeah.
Yeah, Munich. So that was basically driving from the far south of Germany to almost the whole north of the country. And that was really pretty. It was a lovely time.
Yeah.
Fall, beautiful colors. But so in Germany, all the roads are great.
Yeah.
Really good. And I don't remember any problem with roads in France.
No, the biggest difference to Ben's question about compared to the U.S., the U.S. was made for cars.
Yeah.
The majority, almost all the U.S. roads were developed with cars in mind. European roads were not, and it's not at all uncommon that all these roads, which are hundreds, if not thousands of years old, are, well, maybe not thousands, but certainly hundreds and hundreds of centuries old, were designed for carts. And cars don't fit on them. And so there's just weird rules about how you park. And so many roads you will find there's just one lane. There are two lanes. And one of them is for all the parked cars and the other one. And so there are special rules about oncoming traffic and who has to give way to who, which, Americans are not taught because everything is made for American cars, and in Europe that's not the case. So there's weird stuff like that. But on the other hand, Europeans love roundabouts, which is generally kind of still an oddity to find. In the town we live in, there is a roundabout that was actually built in the time we've been here. I think when we got here, they were finishing it, and it got finished while we were here.
Yep.
And nobody in town understands how everybody's afraid of the roundabout. My mom, it freaks her out every time she drives through
really?
it. And we watch people, and it's like. And we realized, it's not part of driver's ed. In England, when we got our British driver's licenses, you have to be trained. There's rules about how to use your turn signals and how. So this is probably the biggest thing I've certainly noticed between American driving and I guess I'd say English driving, because that's where we got our driver's license too, because we had to read up the new rules and all that. And there's just a fundamental shift in your attitude and expectation.
Yep.
In American driver's ed, you are taught very clearly to assume every single other car on the road is a threat. And you have to be constantly vigilant because they will mess up, they will pull in front of you. In England, and I don't know if this is true for the rest of Europe, it's the opposite. You are driving forward assuming every other driver is going to do what they are supposed to do, and that you have to act accordingly. Because if you come to an intersection and you do not just barrel through it if you have the right of way, then Jen literally failed the first time she tried to get her British driver's license because she came to a roundabout and she kind of slowed down because she wasn't 100% certain about something, and she got dinged for that because the quote was, you were inconveniencing the traffic because every other driver assumed that, she's going to go right through this. She's going to barrel through this without stopping.
My signal light wasn't on, so she's going straight.
Yeah. And so there's this kind of implicit trust that everybody is going to do what they're told. And there's an implicit distrust in American driving that you have to assume everybody is just going to zag in front of you and completely disregard. And so it's a really it's a totally different approach to driving.
Well, and I would just also say that because I caused inconvenience to the other driver, that's a really...
By slowing down when they weren't expecting to have to slow down. Right.
Yeah, but I was dinged for inconveniencing someone.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Which, as opposed to, I think, American driving, which you
would have been lauded. You approached that very smartly because you couldn't be 100% certain what that car coming down the road was going to do.
Did you come to a full and complete stop?
Yeah. So that's a big difference. And I can't say if that's the way it is in France and Germany or...
We can say it's not the way it is in Malta.
No, well, the way it is in Malta is kind of a combination of the both, because everybody just does whatever they want and just acts as if there's no other car on the road. And it's
a free-for-all.
It's Mad Max Road Warrior time. And the same is true, I would say, to a lesser extent in Italy, based on our Italian driving. I would say the Maltese are even more hardcore. It's like, look, I'm pulling out. If we get in an accident, that's your fault, because
I was in the intersection.
It's really far out. So those are some anecdotal experiences about driving on the continent. All right, Ben R. then wonders, in recent podcasts, I shared my love of donuts. Ben does not care for traditional donuts, but is obsessed with potato donuts.
Potato donuts?
Have I heard of them? No, I have not. Have you heard of potato donuts?
No.
I would assume not, based on...
You can find them in a lot of places in New England.
We've
only been to Old England.
Yes. That's true. We have not been further north than New York, have we?
No, and we haven't been.
I mean, we could have been. We were stuck there in New York for like 2 months, and we could have just driven up north.
We didn't know how long we were going to be there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do a search for.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring Chrome back up if I can find the button. Boom. If I can find the button.
Potato donuts. That sounds like.
Come here. Potato donuts. Spelled the wrong way. Well, they just look like donuts.
Mashed potato donuts.
So, okay, so they're using mashed potatoes instead of wheat, I guess, as the base.
Well, there's yeasted sweet potatoes.
Yeasted sweet potato donuts. I don't know. I don't know anything about this.
I think probably Ben R. needs to send us post-haste.
You're under no obligation. Oh, there's recipes for making them. Jen is really not a donut fan at all. I love donuts. And so, yeah, this is definitely something I have to try. That is really intriguing.
Mashed potato donuts.
Yeah, it's totally a thing, it would appear. And to anybody else like us who has
never... Sweet potato cake donuts.
Sweet potato, oh my goodness. A whole new world.
Yeah, okay, well, we've got to get to the East Coast.
Okay.
And have some donuts.
All right, then we have Jack. Jack actually prefaced this by saying, hey, look, I know you really don't want to do politics stuff, so feel free to skip this if you want. And I thought about it. I briefly skimmed them. It didn't look too terribly contentious, and we have so few questions this month. I figured, what the heck, let's give it a go. So, question one. When last we left the topic, I had mentioned single world governments do not necessarily hold authority or power over people, but instead are for the people, by the people. And Jack wants to know, what do I mean about that? Because all government holds authority and power over people, even representative democracies. For the people, by the people is a concept developed during the Enlightenment to grant legitimacy to government power by placing safeguards against its abuse. However, even under that framework, government has the authority, theoretically derived from people, to impose laws, regulations, taxes, etc. on people through force. And in representative democracies, you get to vote to try to tip the scales certain ways, but in the end, if you disagree with something the government requires, you still have to follow it. Yes. And that's true. But everything the government does is by decree of the people in a representative democracy. And if you do not want laws to be in effect, you have steps you can take to address that. Certainly on a national level, not really much you can do other than, vote for your representatives and all of that, or even run for office yourself. That is something that you can do in a representative democracy that you cannot do in an autocracy to try to engender change. And of course, as you know, Jack, there are many, many people who do that. And many of them succeed, quite frankly, in America. More and more so. Seems like previous experience is becoming less and less of a requirement in our representative democracy. Heck, that was in the latest season of Curb Your Enthusiasm. That was an entire plot thread throughout the entire season of Larry trying to get a local ordinance change to better suit him. And so, yeah. At the end of the day, what is government? Government is an agreement between people recognizing that there are greater goods that have to be met to ensure the greater good for everybody. And we all have a say in that. Now, at the end of the day, yes, you may not like having to pay taxes to fund the police department when you yourself have never had a fire at your house, but we agree that for the greater good of the community, it is a worthwhile expense. And if you disagree, you have avenues you can pursue. So, I think we just don't see eye to eye on this. At the end of the day, this is something that does come. It is driven by the people. It is not some kind of autocratic, authoritarian, oppressive system we have here. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of problems we have with our system. More and more every day are coming to light, and need some fundamental reforms. Huge reforms, in fact. But it is still the best we got, because every man, woman, and child for himself is garbage. And if that is what we had stuck to, we would still be out in the wilderness, living in caves, rubbing sticks together. It is only because we came together as a species and agreed that we will put aside our individual needs, in some cases compromise our individual needs to be able to address the needs as a whole, because that benefits everyone in the long run that we have gotten to the top of the food chain. And so, yeah, it's freaking fantastic. Government is, everybody talks about the fire and the wheel and the internet and language. Those are all amazing. Government belongs on the same list of absolutely essential species-changing things that makes us different than the rest of the life forms on this planet. So, yeah, I guess that's broadly my feeling. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Honey Pie.
I would just like to say that I would not consider living in a country where there wasn't a word of law. And a common agreement.
Yes. I mean, geez Louise, can you imagine a libertarian paradise where, I guess everybody just has to use their own money to hire their own personal security force to take care? I mean, it just immediately, a lawless society is such a ridiculous concept. I know it's a power fantasy for so many people. That's why so many people love westerns, because of the romanticized version as opposed to the reality of what the Old West was, and which is often really problematic for lots of different reasons. And it's also why everybody loves post-apocalypse. Hey, laws are gone. I only have to pull myself up by my bootstraps. I'm not responsible for anybody else. That's an implicitly selfish power fantasy that I think is very unfortunate. Even if Mad Max is a fun movie. Alrighty, anyway, question 2. Assuming it wasn't answered above, you will have to decide whether that was an answer. What kind of government would a single world government take? Bicameral, like the US or UK? House Senate split in the US, or the analogous common Lord split in the UK? Does it have a typical 3 co-equal branches of government? Legislative, judicial, executive, something else entirely? Is there a government currently in existence that it would like? What safeguards you see adequate to stop from being tyrannical? I am certainly not very well read. As much as anything else, I kind of go by gut feel and an appreciation for the reality of human existence. So I am not a deep enough thinker to be able to architect the perfect human government. I can't do that for you, Jack, as much as I'd like to. I can say, just again, kind of in a touchy-feely way, I'm a much bigger fan of the UK. I mean, the 2 systems of government I'm most familiar with are the US, because I grew up here, and the UK, because we had to study the heck out of it to get our UK citizenship. And I do believe the UK system is implicitly superior because of, the parliamentary system, and which honestly, we could dump the House of Lords as far as I'm concerned, and we could, kill the Senate as far as I'm concerned. I think those are vestiges from old white dudes who wanted to make sure they didn't give too much power to the common folk. They wanted to have, a safety gap, and don't get me wrong, I appreciate the existence of a safety gap because, common folks can be swayed in the wrong direction. But it turns out, so can the rich people in their own selfish ways. So, but the thing I appreciate more about the UK is, say what you will, but they are not quite so gridlocked, to borrow a famous phrase that Saturday Night Live made fun of many, many years ago during Ross Perot's run. Gridlock! They're not quite so gridlocked because, hey, there is you vote for your party. That is the top party, and if people don't like it, they can move that party out. I know America really wants to hold on to their, everything has to be compromises between multiple parties, and I think you're seeing it's falling apart. Now, personally, I don't know much about them, but I am a bigger fan of Germany, the Nordic countries that actually engender and encourage a wide variety of parties and coalition-based governments. I do ultimately think that makes the most sense, but I can't speak to those very much because I'm just only tangentially aware of them. But something like that, coalition-driven, multi-party systems, I think are probably the best. And I think that's proven out by the insanely successful highest quality of life indexes that the Nordic countries, even though they're beautiful but really depressing places to live, just because the weather's so bad year round, because they have so little sun compared to everybody else because they're so far north. And yet, highest quality of life, highest standard of living indexes, highest happiness quotients, all of that stuff, because I think in large part. And so that's kind of broadly where I would come in. You have anything to say to that, Honey Pie?
I agree with all that.
Jen agrees. Okay, not surprising, because we're married and we get along and we see eye to eye more often than not. Okay, question 3. Assuming this wasn't answered above, and again, Jack, you'll have to be the judge of that. I previously stated the ability to move, to escape bad governments is a privilege that not everyone has. Jack agrees. Jack! it's a Jack where everyone agrees, yay. But why am I adamant that the privilege should be taken away entirely? I don't believe I'm adamant of that. I am Jack, I hate to shock you here. I am pro open borders across the board. The sooner we as a species get rid of borders across the board, the better. I am all for freedom. Again, I was an Andrew Yang fan. People thought he was a one-issue candidate. He was a 150-issue candidate. One of his issues included government subsidies to help people move. I mean, nobody else has ever had that in a representative democracy, and I thought that was actually really great. I don't know how that came across. That you think I'm against the privilege of being able to move. I am pro-moving. I am anti-borders. Is anything. But anyway, why can't we extend the privilege to escape a bad government to more people instead? Because a bad government implicitly takes that away. That's a fundamental fallacy. You can say, oh, well, let's let government be as bad as we want, but they will keep open the opportunity for people to mass exodus. And what? They'll subsidize it? A bad government, a corrupt government, is not going to do that. That's just fundamentally antithetical to human nature, Jack. You know this. Anyway, if you force everyone under the same government, there is no escape. Oh! At some point in the past, I said I am really the... what do they call American democracy, or the states thing? They call that the something of ideas, that every state, it's an incubator or something like that. Because, different states do different things, and eventually it'll percolate up to the federal government when the best, it's literally a survival of the fittest for political ideologies. And so you're just like, oh, you love that. And I'm like, no, that's crap, because there are so many things. I just look at what's going on. Look at abortion rights in, the states. And, not that I want to go down the road of abortion. It's a much deeper, more nuanced discussion, and it's unfortunately not really handled by our side as well as it should be, because we diminish the alternate view rather than actually address the perspective of the other side of the abortion debate. But still, look how things are playing out. The test labs of democracy, the classrooms of democracy, I forget what it is, but something that America is called. And so you're saying, oh, it's great that the 50 states is great, because if you don't like the fact that your state abolishes abortions, you should just move. And I said, well, no, the federal government should just allow freedom to people everywhere, and should curtail states trying to deny people basic freedoms. And again, I appreciate abortion. What about the freedom of the fetus and all that? Don't really need to go down that rabbit hole. Right. So, no, I guess when I said that, Jack, you somehow took that to mean that people... Oh, no. What you're saying is because I want one... Oh, yeah, it comes back to one world government. One world government means you can't escape. It's one world government everywhere. Yeah, you can change it. You can change it from within. It always drives me nuts during the Trump presidency that there were so many good people in government who said, look, I have to resign in protest. Like, okay, I guess that's a principled stance. You know what would be better? Stay and fight. Stay on the inside. Fight every day. Get fired and fight every day until they kick you out of the building. Don't resign in protest. You're in the building. Effect change as much as you can. And I say that extends to every citizen if there's a fundamental problem. Because that is the strength of democracy. That is the strength of government, because it is a compact that we all enter in together for the betterment of all of us. And so I've circled back around. Anything in final to say, Honey Pie?
No, I think you summed that up nicely.
Okay. Anyway, hopefully, Jack, you enjoyed a bit of the Jack Attack return. But again, that was mostly because we didn't have many questions this month. Alrighty. Kirk was just listening to my discussion from last month's talk through about die versus dice, where, for folks who missed it, I pointed out somebody was asking, plurals and singulars, and it turns out it used to, officially. Well, no longer officially. It used to be that dice was plural, die was singular. You roll one die, you roll multiple dice. And I pointed out, as of at least a decade, it must have been over a decade ago, that I read that the Oxford English Dictionary no longer said, the Oxford Dictionary said, no, they're synonymous now. Dice is singular and plural. Anyway, Kirk is a business English teacher in Germany. And he often hears people goof this up, referring to one die as dice and two or more dice as dices.
Oh.
Would I foresee one day becoming a rule if we accept dice as singular? Well, whether we accept it or not, It's the law of the land now. Is there some precedent for this? Deer and buffalo formerly had the same form for their plural, but recently it's acceptable to say deers or buffaloes. I don't have a problem with somebody saying, hey, look at all those dices. Or, oh, look out, it's a buffalo's crossing. That's fine. Honestly, quite frankly, English is so full of ridiculous, stupid rules like that are just a holdover from it being a mishmash of French and English and German or French and German and a million other rules are completely inconsistent. Why do we call cows versus beef, venison versus dairy, because they came from different lines. It's such a weird hodgepodge language. As I understand it, it's one of the more difficult languages to learn for complete novices because it makes no sense. So honestly, really, if you want to talk 100 years from now, it is probably for the best if slowly over time we get a more consistent set of rules. Like, oh yeah, plural means you put an S at the end. Or an ES. And you know what, quite frankly, if we could get rid of ES versus S, that would be fine too. Fewer, more elegant rules is better. And even though it may sound too weird to us because we've spent our whole life talking about, well, I'm look at all those dice as opposed to look at all those dices. If somebody said to me, and with a thick accent, I understand that English is not their first language. What's your favorite size dices? I would know what they mean. It's fine. No harm is done. And if we, continue to evolve our language to get simpler and less weird, that's probably a good thing in the long run. Do you have anything to say about that, Honey Pie?
No.
No. Okay. All right, folks. You need more chicken questions, obviously. All right, or dog questions. Lanny often hears Jen and I discuss our love of animals. Okay, honey, this one's you're going to be in. But wonders if we've ever given thought to taking it a step further to reduce animal suffering overall by looking at a vegan or plant-based diet. Lanny thinks we're great people, have what it takes to at least review and see if there are any options. Tastier, healthier, more nutritious, ethical meat substitutes are coming out every day. Lanny appreciates when a bit sales pitchy, but wonders if we consider it. Keep up the great videos and podcasts, adds Lanny. I just blathered on for like 3 questions. I'll let you talk for a bit.
Well, I know that we have tried the Miracle Burger?
The Impossible Burger.
Impossible Burger.
One of them. The Burger King one, the first one that really made a big splash, yeah.
Yeah, and actually I think you tried that one. What did you think?
Oh, I thought it wasn't quite right, but I think it's perfectly reasonable. It's perfectly good enough. The problem with it is, one, it's very unhealthy. It's to try to emulate the taste of meat. It is so laden with salt and all kinds of stuff. It is an unhealthy thing to eat, quite frankly. I am personally not excited about all the impossibles and all of that. I'm very excited about cultured meat. I think I've mentioned this in a podcast in the past. Cultured meat is going to be another one of those things, like fire and the wheel and government and language, that fundamentally and forever changes the direction of our species. Because once we have cultured meat, and it's coming fast, because there is so much money to be made. For people who are like, the capitalist system is nothing good comes from capitalism. No, cultured meat will change everything. All right, I don't know what that is, but I am not going to answer it. They can leave a message. It was going to radically change everything, and I firmly believe it's going to happen in our lifetime, Lanny, that, the Impossible Burgers and whatnot of the world are a really great stopgap, but that's ultimately where we're going, and it's going to be here very, very quickly. It is going to get ramped up, and we will no longer have to, deforest the world to make more room for cows. We will no longer have to go into suffering. Every, cow slaughter plant better be making investments in, labs for culturing mass productions of meat, and society will have to get used to it. But by the time your grandkids are adults, they will there will still be some people out there saying, no, I got to eat the real cow. If that's not real blood, of course it is real blood. Cultured meat is real blood, but it's grown in a lab instead of grown in a uterus. If it's not real blood, I can't stand it. That's going to be a weird thing that only crazy rich people do. In the same way, crazy rich people invest a lot of money in horses. Because, horses do not serve a function now other than just idle pastimes, where once upon a time, horses moved the world. And the same thing is going to happen with meat, where there will still be, and in the meantime, to answer your question,
We do the best we can with buying pasture-raised meats that have had a good life.
Yes, exactly. We actually, when we got back to America, we toured a bunch of small local independent farms around us, spent a weekend doing it, and found the ones we liked the most with the people. We saw how they treated their animals and said, okay, we now buy a year's worth of meat at once.
Yeah.
And we continue to do that, and that's the main thing we try to do. And we really, really, really try to cut down. We don't, not 100%. We do still have lunch at Red Robin, and I have no idea where that meat comes from. I've never said this out loud. Jen doesn't know this either. One thing I do every time we eat out, and I am eating a burger or whatever, I purposely force myself to run through my head visuals of some of the most horrific animal treatment I've ever seen.
Oh no!
I do. I mean, and you don't want to hear about it, honey, but the way cows are slaughtered.
No, I don't want to hear it.
I do that. And it, not that it matters, not that it helps the cows. It's just a personal penance I carry for myself. That is something I do, and I do it in part to say, okay, well, this is an exception. This is not, we do not do this all the time. We do our stuff where we had animals that were cared for and lovingly raised and had really great quality of life. I mean, we were just talking about this morning. We just got 6 new chickens. Jen heard a cockle-doodle-doo this morning. Yep. So we're going to have to figure out which one is the rooster, and there's going to be a really good chicken soup we're going to be having by the end of the month, or by the end of the week once we figure it out, because that is who we are. It's and I agree, and I respect the hell out of you, Lanny, presumably, and anybody else who makes that choice. And honestly, I would argue it is the right choice, but it's not one that we can really make for ourselves right now. And instead, I'm just, I am the biggest cultured meat booster in the world. Do you have anything to add to that? Once again, I took over, and this is going to be yours. Oh. Sorry.
Well, I just think I have actually diverted a lot of our protein consumption into eggs.
Yes, that's true. Yes. Yeah, that's very true.
So we eat probably a third the amount of meat as we used to.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep. So, and I mean, and almost all those eggs are homegrown by our chickens that aren't battery hens, that are taken very good care of.
Yep.
I mean, our chickens have such a good life, much better than they could possibly have. And given the choice, I think they would rather stay in. Did I talk about in previous how you've been like? Oh, no. You weren't here, but there was a Q&A section. Somebody asked about chickens. I said how you've been slowly annexing more of the the surrounding countryside around our house.
Yeah. We just did that again.
Yeah. So that's where we're at. And honestly, Lanny, if you want to call us hypocrites, guilty. There's no two ways about it. We know we could do better, but there are just some quality of life things that we're just not ready to compromise on, I guess. But we try to address it as best we can.
Yep.
Okay. Matt H. has several questions. Here's the big jump of questions. This was like from 3 or 4 different emails. Apart from the obvious healthcare and Essen spiel, what do you miss most about not living in Europe? Because every time you ever ask, it's always, free healthcare.
Yeah. Well, I think in general, food in the EU and the UK is better.
Okay.
There's no hydrogenated oils. There are no all the sugar subsidies.
High fructose corn syrup stuff.
Yeah, that happen in the United States. And that stuff gets put into everything because it's produced and it's got to be used somehow.
Yep.
So I think for those two things alone, the UK is much better. There's much clearer packaging on UK food, so you know what you're actually getting. They're very against all of the artificial colors and flavors, so those are listed out and very rarely used, actually, at least in the stuff that I used to buy. I think actually animal welfare in the UK is certainly better than it is in the US. They have a welfare trust for battery hens, which means they rehome hens after they've reached their peak production period. There's a lot of people that will just adopt hens and allow them to live out their lives. And also, I think that they're just much more aware of animal welfare in general in the UK. Mm-hmm. You don't see these huge CAFO lots of animals in the UK. Local abattoirs are still used. And in fact, Bex.
Oh yeah.
We used to get pig products from a neighbor, and she would raise these pigs, and she would take them to the abattoir, and they would be, humanely slaughtered. Mm-hmm. But it was a lot of small production. Now I'm not saying that's UK wide, but at least it was available and easily achievable. So what else about the UK?
Well, the other thing you always talk about is the sense of history.
Yep, love the sense of history. Everywhere you go.
Yeah. I mean, just even driving along a country road, you get this crazy stone fence. This has probably been here for 500 years.
Yep.
Because nobody would build a fence like this today.
No.
It's so labor intensive. Yeah, I mean, and it just exudes so much charm and history.
Yeah.
You miss accents.
I do. I like the British accent.
Yep. My personal favorite, I love Scottish accents. I
actually
just
really
listen to
enjoy Welsh
Scots.
as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, they're all wonderful. I could live to a Scotsman or a Scotswoman all day long. And I worked with several Scots, and they were always my favorite people to talk to, just because I loved listening to them. What else? I think we've talked about this before. I believe living in America incentivizes and encourages a consumeristic attitude that we largely abandoned when we lived overseas. In part because it's just much harder to consume. It's just not as convenient. Although I'm sure that's changing. I'm sure probably British people use Amazon Prime now just as much as American people do, I would assume. But we feel like we just buy more things now. We are very, very quick. Well, let's just buy a solution as opposed to be more self-reliant. I think that kind of changed us. And not that one is better than the other, but I'm sure Jen probably preferred the
mend it, make it
Yeah.
work kind of. Yeah. I think so. It's hard because we've been back now for 4 years.
Yeah, it's getting to the point where I'm kind of forgetting what life was like, in all honesty.
Well, and also the 6 years that we lived on Malta, 5 of it was on a little tiny island, and we just kind of lived our lives there. I mean, we had what we needed, so we didn't really do a lot, I think. I don't know. It's difficult. What was the question? Apart from the obvious healthcare and Eschenspiel, what do we miss most about not living in Europe? Well, one of the things I really want to do when COVID willing, and when we move back there, is just take more trips and do drives, through France or through Italy or whatever, and just kind of wallow in the sense of history and the timelessness of a lot of these places, and enjoy the architecture and the history and the art
and the unique cultures and the language, and everything is just different.
Yeah. I know there's 50 states and each one has its own character, but it's just not the same.
No,
it's just not the same. So I think it's easier for me to stay in the United States right now because of COVID, because I know I wouldn't be able to do what I want to do if we were to move back to England right now anyway. So it's sort of convenient, I guess, that all of this is happening at the same time that I want to be here anyway to be near family. So I'm not being pulled kind of in both directions. I guess that's sort of a silver lining of COVID. I try and think of something positive about it.
Oh, I should add, just in case anyone's listening, we have several really good friends in Europe. So let's not forget them too.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Vice versa. Were there any annoying things or European habits that we're glad to be rid of?
Well, the crazy driving in Malta would certainly be one. I think.
Or just driving in general. I mean, to that earlier question, it is just so much easier to drive, even with that fundamental shift. You have to be on guard more in America. And everybody complains about Italian drivers. I really do feel like I shout at people more on American roads than I ever did on European roads, even Maltese roads. I don't know, maybe even Malta, because I just know this is what I have to expect. Whereas I expect more from American drivers, but I feel like there's just a lot more selfishness on the road in America at the end of the day. It feels that way to me. But anyway, go on.
Well, I know, since we lived most recently in Malta, obviously the dust. There's a lot of dust in Malta because it's limestone. A lot of limestone there.
Well, and then there's also lots of dust in the air because it's blown up from the Sahara too.
Yep, that too.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because we used to live about 5 miles from our flat on Gozo to the main town on Gozo, which was Victoria. And I used to, make sure I had at least 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 things to do every time I went to Victoria. I mean, we just didn't go to Victoria for any old one thing, unless, like, I had an emergency vet visit or something like that. But I would do 3 different things every time I would go to town. And so I would only go to town maybe once a week or something, because, But now I find that I drive a lot more. A lot more.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the miles I've driven, just not counting going on trips or anything, is at least 10 times. At least 10 times. Yeah.
But you're still okay. You're back to the previous one of what do you miss about Europe? They're supposed to say what do we find annoying about Europe?
Oh. Yeah.
But that's another good one to add to the previous list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also, European towns are much more walking friendly. So you could, quite often I would just walk into the nearby town and get the milk or the whatever it was we needed and walk back. There's very few places in America, I think, that you can walk to your local grocery store.
Yeah.
So again, that's car oriented.
Yep. But again, annoying things about Europe.
Oh, annoying.
Not the things you, yes, we moved past the things you miss. The longer you think about it, you're just going to think about things you miss. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. What else? I talked about one of the things we like, that sense of history, everything that, in Europe. And that just suffuses into everything. It's the thing we really like. But I would also list that as a thing that's annoying because it turns out people did things really stupidly 500 years ago and weren't very forward thinking. We have a really cheap house we live in. We live in a manufactured house.
Yeah.
But our life in this house, because of the design of this house, is so superior to our 100-year-old house we lived in England.
Yeah.
Even though they both have the same amount of square footage, but just architectural design, because everything is so old. And, it's such a common thing. Oh, well, yeah, this really ancient Victorian or Georgian era house. What can we do? How can we tear out walls to make this a modern way to live? It's wonderful to be surrounded by all these quaint, antiquated things. It also can be super annoying, because the roads are so narrow, because the rooms in houses are so tiny, and it is nice to just have space.
That's true. That is very true.
Yeah. Wherever you go. That's a pro that Jen was just talking about, that, hey, everything's within walking distance. You know what else? You were really crammed into a tiny little place so that everything can be in walking distance. Whereas, America, because of its love affair with the car,
yep.
and therefore we have a requirement of the car, also means America sprawls. America had all the room to sprawl into, and we subsidized the car to make it happen. And it is nice to have breathing room, and I don't think you quite have that in Europe as much. Of course you still can, but people can get acreage and stuff like that. But that's not as much of a common. Even small town life. We live in a small town here in America. We have to drive around in this small town, and and it is more roomy, and there's good and bad to it.
Yep.
All right. Anything else?
Fair enough. No.
Nope. All right then. Moving on. Matt asks, how much of the content that Jen makes do I watch? New creations, custom orders. Do you have a clear view on what she is producing? Okay. When I copied and pasted these in, this got messed up somehow. Here we go. I remember this, and so I copied and pasted. That's right. So, since Jen, even though she doesn't watch my output, is a major part of the right. Okay. No, these were both the same. Regardless. Okay. Apparently, I missed the intro. He started this section, this email with, this is really surprising to hear that Jen never watches anything. Nothing that I do Jen watches ever at all. The only time she ever watches anything is when somebody says, you should really make Jen watch that. Otherwise, it just never happens. And so that prompted Matt to say a couple things. Well, let's flip the script. How much content does Jen make that I watch? And specifically, Jen is upstairs making glass all the time. Do I have a clear view on what she is doing or selling at any time? And it's a good point. And the answer is really no. Jen is in a completely different building. Although even when we were in Malta, she was in a different room in our little 2-bedroom flat. And I know broadly what she does, in the same way she broadly knows what I do. But on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment, order basis, it's very opaque. I would say the big thing is Jen's production is she gets an order, she makes stuff, and then I'm not quite sure, she leaves it in the kiln overnight so it can anneal, and the next morning she brings it in and she has to do some polish work, and or polish cleanup. There's extra steps that have to be done, and I don't even understand what those extra steps are, but because she brings it into the house, if it's something new that she's really proud of, she'll say, come and look at these, and I'll come and look at them and say, oh yeah, those are very pretty, and that's about it. that's about the big, that's where I come in.
Yep, and then we go to a show, and you see actually some of the stuff I've...
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, so you probably don't see it until it's out.
Often, yeah. Yep. So yeah, I would say that 100% goes both ways. Good observation. But anyway, and continuing on with that thread, since Jen, even though she doesn't watch my output, is a major part of the Rahdo input, playing all the games, giving her thoughts offline, appearing in podcasts, and the Jen Jogs, if you're a Patreon backer, of course. Jen, are you involved, am I involved in any of Jen's output or input processes. For example, do I sometimes help or advise in some creative or technical ways, or maybe help out with related shipping, logistics, or finances? Honey.
Occasionally you will help me with something if I'm like on a trip and something needs to be mailed.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can wrap a package.
Yes, it's a very specific process. You have to put certain things in certain ways, in certain bags, in certain cards, and certain stickers, and all kinds of stuff. I think I mostly have it down. Although sometimes I go for over a year and I kind of forget, and she has to remind me before she goes again.
Yeah, well, yeah. And then occasionally I'll ask you, we'll talk about a design as I'm working through a design, and I'll get your input on it.
Mm-hmm.
But usually he says, you should really ask somebody who cares.
Yes.
Basically about that, because I don't particularly care.
I know, it's particularly hard. I mean, she'll do jewelry stuff. Oh, I can do this or this. Here, what do you think? Like, they're both nice. I don't know. Go ask my mom. Or go ask one of your glassmaker friends. That's what Facebook is for.
Yep.
So, yeah, I do that.
But you help with stuff like making sure my website works and some of the more technical crap that I don't want to have to deal with.
Yeah, I probably every month I have to call GoDaddy for some problem or other because of her blog that she has.
Yeah.
It's such a pain to maintain.
I think we're going to get rid of that because it's just nothing but hassle all the time.
And money. It's a huge money sink. And, I mean, you don't use it enough to make it worthwhile. I mean, if you were posting to it twice a week and people were like, yeah, there's a community here, but you just don't. You post to it like twice a quarter.
I know, if that.
Yeah. But it's still a royal pain in the ass, and it gets cyber attacked, and then I got to deal with all kinds of new. Oh, it's just such a nightmare.
Yeah, and I think with Facebook and Instagram and my Etsy shop, I really don't need a website.
Yeah, I mean, it's legacy. It's vestigial at this point. Let's see. So yeah, I do tech support stuff, printers offline type things, and
the internet's not working.
Yeah.
Fix that. Yep.
Creative stuff. Yeah, I mean, the main thing about the creative, she will ask me, should this Witwat have 2 eyes, or is it cooler to have 3 eyes? They're both cute. I don't know. And the number one thing you did fail to mention, logistics. I probably drive to the local post office 5 days a week.
Yep. He does the post office runs.
Yep. Yeah. Every day, Jen's packing stuff up, and then I gotta drive down to the post office and drop them off to save her a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, and that's funny because when we lived in Europe, we remembered that America, you just could put things in your post box and the mailman takes them away. But because we live in a manufactured home community, we don't have our own mailboxes.
Yeah.
And the little thingy on the big.
It's a big communal bank of mail slots that we have.
And the mail slot is too skinny to actually fit my stuff through, so we still have to go to the post office.
Yep. Right. So that's where I begin and end with Jennifer Ham Glass.
Well, and then you help me at shows and stuff.
Oh yeah. Obviously, I'm basically, for folks who don't know, when Jen does a show which is really Dice Tower West and Board Game Geek Convention, she gets a booth. She has a table where she puts all her stuff on, and she has a second table. And I just sit at that second table for the entire time and play games with anybody who walks by. And if Jen has to make a bathroom break, I stand up and hope that during the time she's gone, nobody asks any questions. Or hope that, even worse, somebody's ready to buy, because that's the worst. And if they do, hopefully, please have exact change. Because... I mean, I should know. I mean, I do know how to use the. There was another tech thing I do. I do her credit card scanner stuff, and so I know how to use it. But using it in practice is scary. All right. Okay. What are Jen's thoughts on this? Is glassmaking something, honey, that you prefer to do independently, or do you appreciate support from Richard here or there?
Oh, I would love it if I had somebody who would take my pictures for me and like post stuff on the internet for me and all that. I would like to just be the maker and have somebody do all of the other business-oriented stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of business stuff, which I don't do at all.
Yep. So...
She's dropping hints, and I'm not picking up on them. Sorry, folks.
No, he's busy enough doing his own thing.
Yeah. All right. Behind the scenes of Jen's workshop or process would be cool, or would she rather not share that?
Oh, we've done several.
We
videos.
have done, yeah.
And
they're not even Patreon exclusive ones. I believe that there's at least 2. I'm going to do a quick Google search. By Wolfhound, I'm searching for Rahdo Gamer Glass. Let's see what that comes up with. Oh, but I'm not looking at videos. Basically, just do a search for Rahdo Gamer Glass on YouTube. You will find a 10-minute long video called Gamer Glass, which was recorded in 2013, back when we were still in Malta, and we walked through the entire process of Jen making some glass. And I believe we've done a couple of other ones since then too.
There was a turtle one recently.
Yep.
Can you scroll up?
I don't see it. I mean, so there might be other ones, but I mean that's a place to start if you're curious to see Jen in action. All right, and finally, Rahdo, have you ever tried to make something out of glass yourself? Suppose you'd get free access to Jen's studio. What would be the most complex creation you can manage to make yourself? Jen has certainly offered. When our niece and nephew have come up, Jen's had them make stuff, and she's had her parents make stuff. I've seen her. I feel like I've watched her do it for hundreds of hours. I just have zero desire. There's just not even a scintilla of interest in me to do any kind of creative artistic output. And it's kind of a bummer because that's what Jen absolutely loves to do. And I have no desire to paint or draw or sculpt or crochet or woodwork. I mean, I never. There's just nothing in me that wants to do it, which is odd because for 20 years I had a very creative job of being a video game designer. But even there, the act of the creative part was not the interesting part to me. The interesting part was the creative problem solving, dealing with logistical issues and all of that, and trying to solve problems. I was always happiest when I had a designer who I could really lean on to come up with the really crazy ideas. I could do it, but that was never a strength of mine. I don't think I'm a particularly creative person when it boils right down to it. Other than I guess my creativity comes in the form of storytelling, because that's what I do. I call them Rahdo run-throughs, but I'm first of all, I'm not doing how to plays. I am basically telling stories with board games as my medium, because I try to sit down and I try to tell the story of this game being played. So that's really my only creative outlet I think I have ever had, or any inkling towards. So no, I've never done it. I'm sure Jen would let me do it. I could do it 10 days to Sunday, and I'm sure you'd love it if I did. But yep. I'm not driven in that way at all. I just do not have that set of synapses that fires.
Yeah, I did kind of hoped maybe we could do glass blowing together.
Yeah.
But nope.
I mean, I'd do it, but I know for a fact I would derive no enjoyment from it.
Yeah, and life's too short to do stuff that you don't enjoy.
Yep. Okay, this one you can tune out, honey, because Mike wants me to rank the following TV shows from least favorite to most favorite, and of course say why. Let's see, and of all these shows, Jen has watched one. So, honey, you like Lost, right?
Yep.
So Jen ranks Lost as number 1. But she has never seen Breaking Bad, Mad Men, The Sopranos, Walking Dead, or The Wire, and she's probably not even heard of most of those. What have you heard of those, honey?
I've heard of all of them. Breaking Bad is about a guy, a high school teacher that does cocaine or methane or something.
Yep, does methane, yeah.
Okay. Lost was about some people that got lost on a weirdo island. Mm-hmm. Mad Men was actually about advertising in the, 50s or something? Mm-hmm. The Sopranos was the mob something. Mm-hmm. Don't really care. The Walking Dead is something about zombies. Mm-hmm. And
The Wire?
No, I don't know anything about that.
I didn't think so. They would have surprised me if you could have said something about The Wire. Okay, but anyway. It's
about a tightrope walker.
Good guess. It's about wiretaps. It's a police procedural / It's a very important show, probably one of the most important TV shows in history, that really dives deep into both sides of the war on drugs in America and what it does to entire communities. Oh. And it over its 5 seasons, I think, it approaches it from different facets of what does it do to education, what does it do to media, what does it do to blue collar. It's an amazing show.
Why haven't I been watching it? That doesn't sound
because it's a dark and somber and depressing show. Oh. Why would you want to watch that? Right. You don't watch that. Okay. So anyway, I'm gonna rate those now. Well, first of all, Lost is my favorite of those shows. Lost is probably still my highest ranked show of all time. And why? Because of the consummate storytelling, because of where we were in our lives. Obviously, there's a nostalgia factor. Lost was really weird. Lost was on the air when we left Texas. We watched a sizable portion of Lost on the road when we were nomads for a while, and then Lost was a big part of my experience at Lionhead, and we all talked about, I spent so many hours talking to Peter Molyneux about Lost, and Lost was such an amazing experience if you really let yourself get into it beyond the TV show and looked at all the, the ARG stuff and the things they would drip feed and all the rest of it, and aside from all that, it was just an amazing drama with some of the most powerful and richly drawn characters ever. Its format with the flashbacks and later flash forwards and flash sideways, and a lot does not get near enough attention for its incredible score. The music in that was amazing, and it's still got some of the most powerful moments I'll ever think of in TV. So yeah, Lost is amazing. And let's see, I would say of your list, number 2 would be a tie between Breaking Bad and The Walking Dead. If The Walking Dead, for my taste, has stumbled so far. I don't watch The Walking Dead anymore. Instead, I watch weekly recaps of it from Man of Recaps, because he does a great job, because I just want to keep up with the story, because I tangentially care. But yeah, I don't know what season it was, but when the fundamental huge show change happened that changed everything, I found myself, I just couldn't be engaged with the show anymore. But, its first, 5 or 6 seasons were absolutely amazing. And again, some of the most powerful TV I've ever seen. And Breaking Bad, of course, was flawless from start to finish. Absolutely amazing. You didn't put Better Call Saul on. Better Call Saul so eclipsed Breaking Bad that makes me drop Breaking Bad a little bit. But anyway, I'd tie those for second. Number 3 would be The Wire, for the reasons I was just talking about when I was explaining it to Jen. Number 4 would be Mad Men. And in all honesty, I liked Mad Men, but I'm not that much in love with Mad Men. More than anything else, I'm just in love with the characters. And really, I think it's more I'm in love with it. I love Job Ham, and I love Rich Summer. A board guy, for the board game connection there. And why can't I think of her name? Not Elizabeth Olsen. Elizabeth Moss, such an incredible star. I honestly, for me, Mad Men was never Don Draper's story. It was Elizabeth Moss's story, and it's just unfortunate she was always second fiddle to him. But yeah, obviously the production value of it, the the sense of time and place is amazing, and the storytelling was compelling, but it was mostly the characters there. And yeah, I would put Sopranos at the bottom, even though I think Sopranos is an incredibly important show. Well, and I just talked about this the other day on the R&R show, and I think one of the things that's most important that it doesn't get enough attention for is it helped normalize and destigmatize mental seeking help for for your mental well-being. That if a consummate, almost stereotypical mafia tough guy, wise guy like Tony Soprano can get something good out of therapy, then everybody can. And I think that's incredibly important. You just dismissed it as a mob thing, but really the heart of it, or at least the heart as it started, was it's a mob boss who has to go to therapy. Oh. And then of course it fleshed out, and there was a million characters and all of that, but that was always kind of the heart of the show, and I always thought that was made important. But I have found I loved that element of it, and I watched it for that. And I also watched it for Edie Falco. My God, what an amazing star-turning role for Edie Falco. But yeah, I never cared about the mob stuff. I could take it or leave it. I would have much rather it had been, they are literally working in a garbage company, a legit one, instead of it being a front for the mob. I think I would have enjoyed that more. Because I just don't care about crime drama as a general rule. All right. Anyway, we move on, Honey Pie, to something perhaps you will find interesting. No, you will not. Henrik says that I was the one who made him aware of increased video speed options, and now it's how he watches everything. Movies, shows, audiobooks are so much better at 2.5 speed. His narrator's usually very slow and articulate, so it's much improvement. For folks who don't know, I was just complaining about Chrome earlier, but one of the things that keeps me in Chrome is a plugin called, what is the name of this plugin? It is called Video Speed Controller. And I really need to look. Is that available in other better browsers than Chrome? Because maybe I should switch. But I watch most things at 2.5 speed. So I watch some things that I can really focus on at 3 speed. And the longer you do it, the more you can absorb information faster. It's kind of a muscle. You have to practice at it. So I'm glad you're enjoying it, Henrik. But let's see. Okay, so that was just an observation Henrik made. But then he did have, now I had to pull some of it down below because we have a spoiler section, folks, coming at the end. But Henrik wondered regarding the Matt Fraction Hawkeye run, which is a comic book question. Henrik loved the graphic design, the clear color silhouette based art that was used in the show, but really didn't like the art style for the comic. The gritty, monocolored look reminded him of The Walking Dead, Brubaker, Jessica Jones stuff, amazing stories and characters. Hard to get in the art style. Did you enjoy those art styles? Yes, I very much enjoy them. Because I think they're really important because, I mean, every one of those examples you just gave are all about grounding these characters and making them no longer larger than life and making them more approachable. And I think that works, that really spare, simple approach that's not overly articulated and all of that and downplays, and actually uses real human anatomy. I remember contrary to what I said earlier, I was such a comic book fan that as a kid, I spent a lot of time with my How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. And I can still do all the forced perspective stuff. But I'm learning about how, look, this is the real size of a human head, but here's a superhero human head. And so I very much appreciate that. Comic art that is more grounded and real, but I appreciate it's not for everybody. It's certainly more spare and utilitarian and doesn't really draw the eye quite as much. So yeah, but no, I loved it. And we'll come back to that. Patrick says, I recently watched the Daredevil show on Netflix and really enjoyed it. I'm a Marvel fan, Patrick notes. And Patrick was wondering what my thoughts were of the show and how would I rank it compared to other Marvel content. Apologies if I already answered the question past. No, I haven't. I really liked all the Netflix stuff in theory. In practice, the problem with every single show was every single season should have been a 6-episode run. Maybe 8 at the most. But the fact that they were all 10 or 12 made them too languid, too quick to follow down really uninteresting B-plots that really made it very, very hard to stay with it. And in fact, as great as the Daredevil show was, I mean, it suffered from it just as much as Jessica Jones or Luke Cage or I liked Iron Fist most than most people, but I think really more than anything else, Iron Fist suffered from the same problem. They just they stretched themselves too thin. What's the Bilbo or the Frodo Baggins or the Bilbo quote? I feel like butter on toast.
Oh, where it's been scraped too thin.
Yeah. I mean, and that was the problem with every single one of those Netflix shows. If every single one of those Netflix shows had been a tight 6. Like what Marvel is doing now on Disney Plus, I think they all would have been better, and I bet you they might still be alive today. But they were just too languid and slow-paced, and it's so bad that as much as I really enjoyed Daredevil, I couldn't make it past the 2nd or 3rd episode of the 3rd season of Daredevil, and I never finished it. And I eventually gave up and watched a Man of Recaps summary of it. So that makes me kind of sad, but I always appreciated the more gritty tone, the more human, down-to-earth storytelling. The plots were interesting, the characters were interesting, but yeah, this edict, they must be 12 episodes long, just none of them could sustain. My favorite of all of them was actually Jessica Jones. I thought that was the show I enjoyed the most. I found the most compelling. Okay, dogs!
Woo!
Honey, it is time once again for Charlie and Sky, and this time they're labeled. Honey, that's Charlie, and that's Sky.
Oh.
Now, I don't know if that actually helps. At the end of the day, what if I said that was Charlie and that was Sky? I honestly, what if I said these are both Charlie or both Sky? Would you believe it? I know, Nigel, I know, I appreciate, but you're not helping.
They both got pink noses.
They both have pink noses and roughly the same length ears, but those are 2 excellent pictures for folks who watch. And if you're listening and you want to see a really adorable picture of Charlie eating a treat and reaching for it with all doggy earnestness, and Sky snoozing on the edge of a couch and letting all the jowls hang out, you can you can go to watch this on YouTube and just skip to the end and look at the dog pictures. And that was it. Like I said, this was we had very few questions sent in to questions@rahdo.com and only 2 dog pictures. So that's it.
Only 2. Well, I guess we had to look up the other breeds.
But we did. Yes, you're right. We did. Yeah, that was cool. Yeah. And what was it? What was it?
Red Setter.
The Red Setter is the winner. Yep. Yeah, I feel like someday we do have to actually have some Labradors. I mean, they seem so wonderful.
They do look awesome.
Yep. Anyway, though, so we're pretty much done, except not quite, because there were some spoiler-centric stuff for Spider-Man and Hawkeye. Spider-Man No Way Home and Hawkeye's TV series. So people wanted to ask about that. Obviously, a lot of people haven't seen it, so we're going to do spoilers at the end, so you can get out early. But before that, Honey Pie, time for words of wisdom. Sky is listening.
Okay.
She had opened a half an hour ago, but her phone went to sleep. She's trying to find it again.
Okay, here we go. Ready?
Hold on a second. You know what? I'll put it on screen. Hold on. For the folks who are watching. Do you want to see? Could I do that? Oh, and I just pushed the wrong. Right, is it still that?
Yep.
Let's see. I don't know if I have the green. Is the green screen on? Yes, it is. Oh, it's
you
not
go.
focused though. Hold on.
How can it not be
Focus.
focused?
It's a whole thing.
All right. It's a thing.
All right. Can you see it?
I can.
All right. Then read it.
Oh, okay. Never regret a day in your life. Good days give happiness. Bad days give experience. Worst days give lessons. And best days give memories.
Okay. That's excellent. That is from yourpositiveoasis.com. That's great. Okay, folks, and unless you want to hear some Spider-Man and Hawkeye spoilers, get out now. But send more questions to questions@rahdo.com so we have a longer episode next month. Thanks for listening. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And hang on, Honey Pie. I mean, the questions are for you, too.
Oh, I thought I was done.
Henrik continues. Honey, what are your thoughts about the Hawkeye show?
Oh.
Now, the second part, can you wax Rhapsodic Valve for a bit and compare it to the Hawkeye comics?
No, I
You
can't.
obviously can't, but what did you think of the Hawkeye show?
I liked it. I like the new character. I thought she was spunky and fabulous.
Kate Bishop.
Kate Bishop, yes, and I thought there was good interaction between the two, Hawkeye and Kate, and I think it's really interesting because I think we've had sort of a, how do I say this nicely?
Okay. Nobody from Marvel Studios is listening to this, Honey Pie.
No, I'm talking general society-wise.
Okay.
I think we've had a laxity in moral standards.
Okay.
And I think, well, this is going to be a spoiler.
No, that's why, I mean, you
Okay.
speak totally and completely. Folks, again, this is your last chance. Jen is going to spoil something about the Hawkeye show without any compunction or reservation.
Well, I had some reservation, but now you've taken it away.
Yeah. This is 100%. You can say anything you want about anything.
Okay. Well, Kate did the right thing. She turned her mom in. And that is, to me, I think, a foreshadowing of maybe some acknowledgement that we need to get back to some moral standards where everybody needs to be held to a certain standard, even if it's your mom.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a small little moment at the end, but you're right. It's a big moment.
It's very big. And there's just been a lot of kind of downgrading of moral standards in this country, even since we've been back.
Yeah, I assumed you were actually, when you were talking about that, you were going to talk about how, a big part of the show is about Hawkeye taking responsibility for his own actions.
There's that as well.
And coming to terms with what he had done and trying to make right and, constantly living up to, what, others had sacrificed for him and stuff like that. But you're right. Actually, I didn't even think about that Kate turned her mom in at the end. That's very cool. That was your highlight of the show?
I think it was that she had an arc of kind of coming in as a new young person with lots of skills and stuff, but that she also learned morality and what was important. Or maybe not learned it, but defined it for herself. What was the right thing to do?
That's very interesting. That was an impact that Clint had on her, because you see what he was going through, and was willing to make same tough choice for herself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Anything else to say about the show? Did you like the car chase? I know you like that blow up Santa thing.
It's hilarious.
If they kept showing in the previously on Hawkeye, up comes the Santa blow up doll.
Yeah, that was very cute. I thought it was good. I thought it was a nice mix of serious and silliness. And yeah, I wish I could say more.
Okay.
I enjoyed it.
Well, that's all I got to say. Okay, I'll say more about it. But first, Darren wonders, what'd you think of No Way Home? Spider-Man No Way Home, because Jen actually went to the theater with me. We saw it opening day in the afternoon, as quick as we could, and I was surprised. Jen said, I'll come too. Spoiler warnings, Darren adds, apart from the ending, the title made no sense, and the title making no sense, I loved it. Getting them home was never the problem, adds Darren. Yeah. So I'll come back to that too, because Darren, you kind of missed the point of what that title means. But what'd you think of Spider-Man No Way Home, Honey Pie? I have no idea what she thought because we didn't really talk about it afterwards.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was an interesting storyline. I love kind of alternate universe stuff and time travel paradox.
Did you remember anything about Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man or Andrew Garfield, the other Spider-Man movies? There were. I mean, so you remember they existed, but you didn't remember anything about them. You didn't recognize. You didn't really appreciate how it was paying off their storylines. You were just like, oh, this is a self-contained thing. You barely remember young Peter Parker, Andrew Garfield, because we had just watched the previous movie the last night. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't have remembered him either.
Is that the one where they do the trip through Europe?
Europe, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
So I mean, I'm just curious. Did you carry into that movie any knowledge of anything about the previous movies, or for you was it's just a standalone movie where I barely understand? Did you understand what was going on? That kind of stuff.
well, I understood what was going on. Yeah.
But it had no greater meaning for you because you did not remember Doctor Octopus or Green Goblin, or what happened between Green Goblin and the original Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, or what happened with Andrew Garfield.
I do kind of remember the Tobey Maguire Green Goblin thing. Yeah, because it was his friend's father.
Oh wow! Okay.
and there
So I
was-
wouldn't expect you to even remember that.
Yeah, I don't remember a whole lot about it, but I do remember that. And as they came back, I think there was references within their storylines in the new movie.
Yes,
to kind of help you
They-
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like Mary
Aren't you
Jane
dead?
dying.
You know, and
Yeah, stuff like that. So yeah, and so there was some nice completion, like that. Tobey Maguire got to save this movie's Mary Jane.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So there was some nice completion there. But I am not a fan girl, so I'm afraid I probably don't have a whole lot to say.
Okay. So that's all you have to say? I don't even believe you said if you liked it.
Oh, I liked it. I thought it was good. Yeah.
Okay. So that's it. That's all Jen has to say. And I guess the
Well,
part
you talk about it, and then there might be other things that pop up.
All right. Well, okay. Well, no, obviously I thought it was fantastic. I actually I mean, most people, what do you call it? Far From Home is the least of the three movies, but it's actually my favorite. But I really enjoyed this one too. Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's nothing I could say that hasn't been said a million times over. Because it is such an amazing accomplishment. So many plates that are being juggled with that film. Doing payoff for what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, arguably 9, 10, 11 films. All have threads that pay off in this one movie, and yet it feels like a coherent whole movie on its own. That's wizardry, quite frankly, that they were able to do that. And the beats that Peter, that still, I can't think of his name. All I can think of is, all right, what's his name? I can't think of the young actor who plays Spider-Man now. All I can think of is the old actors who play Spider-Man. But, God, that's driving me nuts. That's so weird. How can I not think of his name all of a sudden? But regardless, at the end of the day, it is more than anything. Those are all just paying off long threads. His growth is absolutely amazing. I love the resolution. I think, again, I just really respect the cleverness of how they've effectively rebooted him so that they can move forward. I mean, in case they need to, if, Sony and Marvel can't keep working anymore, that it's set up, okay, yeah, he's effectively been, if they need to, completely plucked out of the Marvel Universe, but he can still work his way in. I appreciate the reference to One Last Day, the comic book series, and I think I'm not a fan of One Last Day. The most important thing about that kind of lives on, that there is one person in the whole universe who remembers what happened, it used to be Mary Jane in One More Day, which was the saving grace of that comic book storyline. Now it's Peter Parker, it's ready for him to, take his next step in life. With a clean slate, but more than just the practicality of setting himself up so that business dealings can work, I thought it was absolutely brilliant that he's finally able to step out, his arc of becoming his own man, stepping out from the shadow of Tony Stark. That's what's ultimately resolved here. He kind of steps into the shadow of somebody else, Norman Osborn, for a little bit, but realized, no, I can't do that anymore. I have to be my own man, and I have to take responsibility for my actions. I mean, I guess it is kind of silly that, I guess it's not silly. It's just so tragic that everything happened because of a choice he made, and then he ultimately, okay, well, I guess I'll live with that choice, but still, a whole bunch of people had to die for it. Aunt May is dead now because of that, and I really hope they play with that and they don't just forget that. But again, it's also a beautiful symmetry to the original comic Peter Parker that, Peter was responsible for Uncle Ben's death. Now he's responsible for Aunt May's death. So really smart how all this stuff comes together, but then also really powerful, emotional storytelling too. And of course, really great. The action was nowhere near as good. That's why more than anything else, I really like No Way Home or Far From Home, because the action in that movie makes better use of Spider-Man and his unique superhero powers than anything else I've ever seen. If anything, it's kind of like Matrix Resurrections. The action in this felt kind of rushed almost a little bit. But it was still good, still very enjoyable. To your point of what's up with the title, No Way Home, it was never a hard time getting home. Yeah, because it wasn't about the villains getting home. It was about Peter finding his way home. And he had no way to return to his home, to his boyhood home, to his childhood. He had to face the trials of becoming a man. And he had no way home, no matter how hard he tried and how much suffering he brought about, because he wanted to go home and he couldn't. That's what that title means, and that's really cool stuff too. So that's my feeling about that movie. Hawkeye, first of all, I will not compare it to the Hawkeye comics because I would not want to spoil them because they're so great. All I will say about the Hawkeye comic run from Matt Fraction, which I believe is about 20 issues, and anybody could get it, the trade paperbacks. You can get it in digital format. I think you can even get it on like Amazon Unlimited, Amazon Kindle. You can read it on your Kindle. If you at all like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or if you at all like that Hawkeye series, definitely go read the comic book run. You would think, oh, but I've already seen it, right? Isn't it? Then they just, no. If you enjoyed this TV series, there is so much more for you to discover if you watch the comic or read the comic book series. Because other than the fact that there's the tracksuit mafia, and there's a really cool car chase, and it's about old Hawkeye and young Hawkeye working together, and there's a pizza dog. Other than that, there's really they're radically different stories, and so that's all I'll say. But definitely read it. I love the show. Jen brought up some really good points, some points I didn't think of, but yeah, I mean, as a way to really say goodbye to because the actor. Jeremy Renner has said, look, I don't want to keep doing this. I want to spend more time with my family. And how awesome is that that's what his character wants to do too. And, they bring that parallel in. But, start a new character. I mean, I loved everything about it. I want an ongoing series of new Hawkeye and new Black Widow because the two of them were amazing on screen. Just their interplay, Yelena and Kate. And yeah, both fantastic. I love them both. I love everything about it. So, Jen is very patiently, she's had one foot out the door the entire time. Every time he stops talking, I gotta get up and go. Oh, no, he's talking some more. Oh, he's crying some more. All right, fine.
Oh, I did like the interaction with Yelena.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to bring that up because I thought that was so fantastic. Now, you didn't remember anything about the Black Widow movie, right? She was just some random character who showed up to you? I mean, I stopped and I explained what it was, but
yeah,
and it was obvious you were just staring blankly because even though we'd watched the Black Widow movie like 3 months ago, you didn't remember anything about it because you just don't remember any of this stuff.
I guess not. Nope.
But you still enjoyed it. Yep. So yeah. I would certainly say the Hawkeye show has been my favorite of the new Marvel series. I think WandaVision was the best one, but Hawkeye was my favorite. So, okay, we're out again, folks. Thank you, as always. Sorry for the spoilers, but more questions at Rahdo.com, and we will talk to you later. Have a nice day. So long. Bye-bye.